much research? Or are we good to go?
I think we're good to go.
All right.
So-
Fucking full send.
I mean, I already know Jarvis is pretty much going to lead the whole damn thing.
No.
You and Jarvis. No, I'm talking about like
Oh, in
y'all's
terms of
conspiracy.
new ideas and
yeah,
such.
y'all shit's going to really just take over. So mine's just kind of like an interlude.
This
to
shit's
the
like-
conspiracy. Yeah.
So yours is gonna be the breather in between every topic.
All right. Well, so welcome to Fodcast.
Oh God! Oh, we're already going.
Welcome to the podcast,
Yeah.
The Foxhole. I'm Jarvis.
Greg.
The flood.
Yeah, Mac.
And these are all aliases. None of these are real names, obviously.
No. Who the fuck would be named Flood?
Correct. This episode, I was kind of excited about. We're going to get into conspiracy theories, or what is so labeled conspiracy theories, because of
Government.
that's just easy for people to call it that because they get scared of certain ideas.
And it discredits you all at the same time too.
It does. A lot of people believe that the term conspiracy theory wasn't like created by the CIA, but was often used by the CIA whenever JFK was assassinated to discredit anybody's ideas that it was anything other than Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah.
And so conspiracy theories was a term to sort of diminish the value of any ideas that
And your
sort of
credibility.
conflicted that.
Yeah.
And then
Drag
you've
your ass
sort of
in.
seen that, especially now during COVID. Like the term conspiracy theory has been used so much to discredit anyone who has any views that go against the main
It's
narrative.
literally if they just want to shut you up, they're just like, oh.
I like the new
conspiracy.
coining they have of like free thinkers. I'm like, that's true. People just trying to free think, and you're like, slap that time like, oh, he's a conspiracy theorist. Like, don't believe anything you heard because this is all headcanon and blah blah blah. It's kind of grimy.
It is. I'm not a big fan of how much everybody just sort of goes along with it too. Like even like friends and family, you can try and discuss certain topics. You can say like, hey, like I don't necessarily think this is true, but let's look at it, the big picture. I've got these facts. I've got all of this that sort of leads the direction of belief that's like, hey, maybe they're lying to you. And it's just like they are not even willing to accept information that's different than what they see on the news.
And you see it. It's like the news is like, oh, conspiracy theorist thinks that big tech might not have his best interest in mind all of the time. He thinks that they may be after money instead.
I mean, a lot of it, I think, would be based off of the areas that they grew up in, how they were raised, and the generations also.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because,
The generation
like
gap.
the older generations, they still have that American pride or whatnot, and fucking they just don't want to go against, their government. They think that they had the best interest in them. Or, like, it's either one or the other. Like, it's the extreme left and right. And then it kind of tapered down to, everybody kind of gets along with more or less with our parents' generation, and now it's just going right back to the fucking extreme left and right.
It's kind of hard now for me with the amount of information that comes out because we live in a technological era, informational era, and we're like so saturated with so much stuff, and everyone has an opinion, and everyone wants to give their point of views on certain thing, and it's all fine. But it gets to the point where it's like the age-old saying, it's like believe half of what you hear and even less of what you read, because going back now and you're looking back at our early days of education and the stuff we were taught in school, and like people going out and doing all their own research now and reading books and being like, they never told us about this. They never told us about this. Why is this swept under the rug? Why do you only take this quick snapshot of this section, but like all these other atrocities or all these heroic events happen that you don't want to discredit?
No.
A majority of conspiracy theories, if you will, that sort of rise up in culture is typically surrounding like elite people who are controlling non-elite people through immoral ways or certain methods of control from some sort of elite. And like, that's typically what a lot of them are covering. And that's why it makes it even fishier when every single news organization will cover the same one at the same time and
just
tell
on the same page all of a
like,
sudden.
hey, anybody who thinks this way is wrong. And it's almost come to an extent where now I can almost learn what's going on by looking at multiple news organizations and saying, if they all say the exact same thing, it's probably like, all right, the opposite's probably what's going on. Like that, you don't even like the news. You can know what's going on by what the news isn't saying. If
Yeah.
that makes sense.
And like people have objectively, mark these things down. Like the Washington Post is owned by fucking Jeff Bezos, the Amazon guy, and like even during the campaign runs for the Democratic Party, it's like Bernie said something negative about Amazon during one of the DNC talks or whatever, and then immediately it was something ridiculous. It was like within 14 hours, the Washington Post put out 6 negative articles specifically on Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
Like just for that comment.
And
It's
that's
like,
why he lost.
History,
It's money.
history is run by deep pockets, and history is written by the victors.
If you follow the numbers, you can answer a lot of these unanswerable questions or what seem to be unanswerable questions. Just follow the numbers and where money's going. If you look at a lot of these news organizations, like legally, they're not even designed as news organizations. They're designed as entertainment industries, like to the nitty gritty of their paperwork and everything. And they're owned by certain corporations because they're entertainment industries. They don't actually legally have to tell you the truth. And then you have to see, okay, where are they getting donations from and why? And if you look at the where and why on a lot of things, you can sort of figure out, okay, you can't really trust a lot of these people who are putting information out. One thing I like to look at, do y'all know about Bohemian Grove?
Sounds familiar.
Well, I
Fully
feel like I'm about to hear a lot about it. So,
All right. So for those who don't know, it's actually one of the more well-known secret societies that are definitely doing some fishy stuff.
it's what made Alex Jones big.
okay.
Back
You know who
I
he
don't
is,
know how
correct?
many years.
Yeah, I know who Alex Jones is.
Okay, so yeah, he had snuck into the area and filmed some of the processes that they went through while they're there. It's an all-male club that occurs during midsummer every year, and you can even look at the
participant list.
well, in terms of what midsummer means, in terms of like a religious context, like the spirituality behind like doing activities during midsummer, and so like that alone is kind of like, oh, okay, that's weird that it happens on midsummer every year. So every year during midsummer, it's like a week long, and they have a few thousand of basically the most elite males in
Okay, yeah, I know what
society
you're talking
coming
about now.
from politicians on both sides, news anchors, major gas company owners,
Just
Just
doctors,
anybody with a recognizable
entertainers,
face.
Yeah, I know
anybody
that's
who
somewhat,
can
yeah.
garner influence or power.
Yeah, and this all the way to like the owners of
Royal
like
families are there.
all the way to the like auto manufacturer
Yep.
CEOs and stuff. And this was something that like I forget if it was like it was almost like 20 years. For 20 years straight, people were like, "Oh no, this is ridiculous. This doesn't exist. No way." And then some dude, aka Alex Jones, snuck in and filmed like an hour and a half of like the whole
what
thing.
they call the cremation of care. So a lot of the stuff they do is almost symbolic to satanic rituals, which is like sure, you can see it as like some sort of a club for fun and games, but you have to think about the amount of power within one group where media is not allowed, and they have the local police force keep anybody out, and they'll arrest anybody who's not on a guest list.
Don't they have
coming in
like
there.
a certain like limit, like a couple miles out? Like, hey, if you start coming towards,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they'll patrol it. And so basically, this list of people, WikiLeaks actually released the 2008 guest list for Bohemian Grove, and you can
It's
sort
like
of
a $20,000 admission fee.
Yep. And then you also have to so you have to be an influential person. You have to put down like a $20,000 admission fee, and then you have to wait 10 years before you can go for your first time.
Oh damn.
Because they're going to monitor you for 10 years after
Yeah.
you pay $20,000.
because they want to make sure you're of their
About it.
standards.
And then once you're there, all kinds of things could happen. With that much power, you can sort of dictate the route that the country takes, because with that many people on the same page pushing the same thing, there's so many intersecting friend circles and power circles that they have that, like, if they want to elect certain people or push certain narratives or change the way your society thinks, they can. Because the military does it in other countries with less people and less power and less resources. And we can just take over a couple of radio stations or change the narrative by, putting posters or like word of mouth. We can change the narrative. So it's just scary to think that much power can just go unchecked. And even scarier, the cremation of care that Alex Jones filmed it's a representation of a sacrifice where they burn the effigy of what Alex Jones witnessed as a child. And then it's two 14 or like a 40-foot tall stone owl statue, which they say represents the Moloch, which is basically like the demon of child sacrifice. And then they say some sketchy stuff. Apparently, he said there's like gay prostitution that's going on there, and like it's just like this weird festival where they just have lots of meetings where they discuss the future of the country.
And this is like full video, like full hour and a half long video. Of like
See, when
everything.
you said the name originally, I'm like, I do recall watching this years back, probably like almost 10 years back. The video,
Right,
when
right.
like when YouTube would like put stuff up there and they weren't really strict on everything.
Before mass censorship, which
Yeah.
alone is already like sketchy, like the types of things that are being censored and why they're being censored. That you should be scared of that, and the connotations that holds. But the I don't know how credible the source is, but I had actually like looked into this lady who said she was the girlfriend to one of the prominent figures of Bohemian Grove, and she had overheard them talking about how they're going to discuss who the next president is.
Oh yeah,
Which, I mean, like, even if they're not actually deciding it, if they decide to want a certain president in power, with that much power, it's likely that as long as they garner some sort of outside influence, like, and they do the rest of the work, they can probably get who they want in power. And, you know, they're just working together to increase each one of their individual goals. You know, it's the system and networks to increase their wealth and their power and their ability to control.
Well, it was something like, it was like 70-something% or 80-something% of all U.S. presidents since the Civil War have literally all, like 70 to 80% of all U.S. presidents since the Civil War have all been a part of either Skull and Bones or the Trilateral Commission.
Well, did you see the documentary that came out? It was like a short documentary about the 14-year-old girl who documented the family tree of the president party. So apparently she did it as a class project. So she was on the news for this too, and they were like, everyone was baffled by it. So apparently she started with, hey, the assignment was, hey, like, do your family tree and like just go back from there. Then she got a little more enthusiastic about it, like, hey, let me just see the presidents. And come to find out, how many presidents we got?
46 now?
46. He was like, so during that time, it's like all 42 presidents were related by blood in some shape or form, minus 2, including Barack Obama, the Clintons, Bush, so on and so forth. And she she went through the whole thing.
It's intriguing to me that people don't realize how much power is passed down through families, as if that. So, like,
It's
if
not
you
like
look
they
at
don't
past
realize.
times,
A lot of people just fucking ignore
they
it.
choose not to
Yeah.
see a lot of bad things because if everything just is easy, nice, simple world, like, it's comfortable for people, so they choose not to believe in some of these
People,
conspiracy theories because it
Yeah.
scares people to think that that's going on behind their heads.
It's
that there's
easier-
max pedophile rings going on in our government, things
Yeah.
like that. Like, people don't want to believe that, so they
yeah.
don't.
It's easier to look at the world in your rose-colored glasses than to like actually see the ugly truth. And it's like they're like I've been in scenarios where I've seen someone shake someone's belief system and like their reality, and you show them facts, and
They
they're
just
like
straight
no.
deny it.
They're like no, and he literally stopped. He was like, everything you're saying is valid. He was like, but I'm refusing to believe you because I don't want to believe that my country does this or this person does that. He's like, I don't want to believe that.
Yeah,
And
well,
then it's like almost kind of with the 9/11 thing. It's just like age-old things like they were brought down. A lot of people believe that. A lot of people don't. And then people are just like, hey, look at how demolition works and how they bring down buildings. Like, I don't have to be a demolition expert to be like, well,
You can't say it's like not sketchy.
Yeah.
Where some of the money was being moved between the Pentagon and other sources right before it happened, and who gained what after 9/11.
People
Especially
who-
whenever apparently the Pentagon was attacked by a plane also, but there was no rebel.
what was the building next to it that
Even the
went down?
video of the Pentagon getting hit by the plane, if it's got 3 frames in which you can see it. They freeze frame it to 3 mobile frames, and there is no.
yeah, it's like the
physical
fucking
aircraft.
Pentagon, the
Yeah.
actual Pentagon.
Yeah.
And they have no supposedly.
But
like-
all
They
the
had
all the
one-
cameras on the Pentagon itself went down.
Yeah.
Except for
it's
one,
like,
and
are you
it's
kidding?
there's 3 frames, and it shows an object, but like freeze framed, it's not an aircraft. They're like, that's a missile. And the other thing too is like there's some sketchy stuff on the reporting. The 3rd World Trade Center building that came down, like building
7.
Yeah.
7. The BBC was reporting that it came down 30 minutes before it actually did, as if it was like meant to come down and they were ready to report on it. And because of the time zone difference, they maybe not didn't realize that they were reporting at the wrong time.
And people were like, "Oh, their video feed is like just off or something,"
It's
but their
delayed.
video feed was supposedly off by only 7 minutes.
Right,
they
and it
reported
was
like
live.
30 minutes.
Right, and it was 30 minutes early. So even if it was off by 7 minutes, technically
be-
that would
What
mean
about 20
37 minutes
afterwards,
early.
Where'd that
Yeah.
23 minutes go?
The other thing too is the global bankers had a lot to gain from us going to the Middle East.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of people point figures towards families like the Rothschilds for sort of pushing attack on the Middle East. Whether or not 9/11 was their fault, even if it wasn't like some sort of like
They
a
still make profit from
planned attack, they can still use something like that to like guarantee attack these people and we're going to stay there.
Well, even George Bush, like I think it was like maybe a whole 2 years later or something, but like even George Bush himself literally like fully admitted. I forget what press conference it was specifically, but George Bush like fully admitted, he was like, "Yeah, Iraq like is not connected to the whole anti-terrorism thing, but we're just going there."
And then
They have something I want.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like the Rothschilds' annual family wealth increase after 9/11 because, they were funding pretty much all sides of the war, like banks do, especially like global banks, increased by like 500% already at like trillions of dollars a year. So in terms of their family wealth, the bank wealth and stuff like that. And that's not, it's almost like immeasurable, banks' wealth, because of all the property that they've got leased out and stuff, like foreclosures, things like that, that they technically own.
So it was in 1956, the top 1% economically owned like 50 something percent of the world's wealth.
So there's 250 families that own over 50% of the global wealth, and 200 of those families live in the U.S. And that, like, you put that in perspective, like, that's tiny.
Global wealth.
That's tiny. That's
Yeah.
like a what 0.0001%? Like,
Yeah. So in the 50s, it was like 50 something percent. Then it was like 1976, I
I was
think
like,
it was like 70 something. And
that
then
is
in 2012, the top 1% economically, it was like 98% of.
And
the
it's
world's
crazier
wealth or
too
something.
because in 2020, a majority of the known richest people, because some of the people who have more wealth than Jeff Bezos and
Yeah,
stuff
you
like
just
in their
don't-
family
you don't hear about
aren't
them.
going to be publicly released.
Yeah.
Because they don't want their image out there.
Yeah.
But the known richest people like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and Bill Gates all increased their wealth by like over 2 times during 2020. Like coming from like 40 billion to 130 billion
well, you see Bill Gates
because
is-
they used COVID.
Yeah, you see Bill Gates literally is one of the like leading sponsors for pushing vaccinations.
The World
in
Health
medical field.
Organization
Like,
is literally funded by Bill Gates,
Yeah.
and Trump actually removed our connection with them, and Biden just now said we're going to work with the World Health Organization again, rehired Dr. Fauci, which he had all kinds of weird connections to people that he probably shouldn't have.
He was the highest paid federal government employee of the year.
Right.
Dr. Fauci. More than the president. Highest paid federal employee of the year.
These
of the
people
United
that are
States.
telling us what to do with this pandemic are making out wildly in terms of financial gain.
Have you-
And the tech companies make way more money when we're closed down because people still spend money whenever we're closed down. And
They
then
probably spend more money just
when we're
because they're
given
locked
free
up,
money
yeah.
through the stimulus checks, so like
Yeah, like 90 something percent of that entire,
$1 trillion
trillion
went
bucks
right back into the tech
went
companies.
to fucking Walmart and Amazon. You know?
Because
that was like
they
a
weren't,
free gift for them.
which is crazy because you're forcing businesses to close down. Then you give the people a bunch of money, so then it forces those people to have to spend money, and they only open businesses. Like it kind of seems sketch. There's a lot to gain from them, and then those same people like Bill Gates are working with the World Health Organization to tell you, hey, we need to continue to stay locked down. Maybe because he's making out super well financially.
have you been keeping up with like the stock market right now?
No, so what the
In
hell is
GameStop?
going on?
Yeah.
So it's a
with-
little bit more than GameStop.
Yeah,
so
I know it's a few like AMC as well.
AMC, Nokia, BlackBerry.
Yeah.
So right now, Robinhood, as of tomorrow, they are planning to not allow.
They already
the
did it
purchase.
today.
Okay, so they did today.
Yep.
So there's a class action lawsuit coming down on them for that
Yep.
because that's like pretty much illegal to do that. Like you can't tell people not to do. So it's
They
crazy.
allowed them only to sell
Yes.
and not to buy certain of the stocks.
Yeah, so it's
because-
crazy because it's funny because like I got this whole news fact and kind of went down a little rabbit hole with it, not too much, from IGN about video games, and they're talking about how the GameStop stock skyrocketed to almost like at the time like $150, and they said at its lowest it was between $5 and $15, and it was a dying company. Like everyone who bought video games and knows the culture like knows it. Like GameStop is not surviving, and
Yeah, they've closed like hundreds of stores
yeah,
this last year.
They
They filed bankruptcy already.
So it's basically, I don't understand the whole nuances to it all. So basically, it's a company, I forget the exact name. They basically are trying to devalue the stock, so
They were betting on it going down.
Yes.
They
It's
were
a
going to
hedge
make
fund.
money
Yes.
if it went down.
So they were trying to do that, and then I guess this Reddit poll kind of like sparked an interest, and they were
Wall
like,
Street bets.
yeah, Wall Street bets. They were just kind of like, hey, this is going on, blah 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 blah, and a lot of people even in the Reddit were just like, hey, I started buying stocks, like, yeah, one, like to stick it to them, but two, it was a nostalgic reason. Like, oh, I remember like hanging out in front of GameStop and getting day one releases and waiting until midnight. So a lot of people were like, it was more nostalgic to like keep it alive, and then it just became this thing, and now it's turned around like, hey, now even as today, like I think it was at $3.99.
It got up over 400.
Yeah, and
They
coming
had
from
they
$4
had
to
to bail out
$14.
a hedge fund.
Yes,
A
Because they
hedge
lost
fund
billions of dollars.
They lost 33% of their 2 point whatever billion dollars.
they-
They
and
lost
they-
it in like 2 days.
and they are furious.
Yeah.
They're furious of it because it's like, hey, you bet on something and you guys lost, and it kind of like
It's
puts
the
in,
same thing that all these big hedge funds and trading corporations have been doing,
Mhm.
where they, pump and dump in different stocks and
Yeah.
stuff so they can make money. And now that like
The
just
little
the
man-
average Joe is doing the same thing, they're like saying, "Oh, you can't do that. We're gonna remove the option for you to even do that, so we can get all of the money
You
back."
saw as soon as it happened, CNN put out an article saying they literally immediately took it to this level. They said white supremacists are buying, stocks from this Jewish, hedge fund
Yeah.
on Holocaust Remembrance Day as like an anti-Semitic thing. It's like, no,
What?
they made money for once, and you're just mad.
Yeah,
Like,
and it's crazy because they make you look like they're like, he's like, yeah, if you don't believe the market, the black market, Wall Street has been manipulated in some shape or form and being dictated and so on and so forth. He's like, this is a good example of like, hey, the little man is one sticking it to you, not intentionally, but it became intentionally
yeah,
now,
and finally
two,
made a buck.
and
you
they're
know.
making a buck, and now you're going under because of it instead of the other way around.
right.
And it's fucked up. I'm like, hey man, like more power to everyone who got some. Because even my buddy Seville called me last night. He was like, he told me about it. Even O'Neill called me. He was like, hey, are you buying stocks?
Yeah.
And I haven't like gone into stocks in like the past 6 months because I like all my money went just sustaining, getting a job, and so on and so forth. And I looked into it and I'm just like, bro, he was like, one of his good friends made $500,000 off of GameStop. He was like, he put like 50 grand because he works for this dude in Beverly Hills. He's like, he put in 50 grand worth of stocks from GameStop, and he was just. I was like, what? What? He was like, yeah, this was in like 24 hours. I was like,
I
this is-
should have done that.
Yeah.
if you actually like
Hindsight's
just keep a
20/20.
decent amount
Yeah.
of money like set aside and just monitor, occasionally you can like for hype reasons, you can make money on these pump
Oh,
and
yeah.
dumps, and cryptocurrency is one of those like huge ones.
I got one for y'all.
Oh yeah,
I'll tell y'all after later.
but yeah, like right now cryptocurrency. It hit like peak in 2017, like thousands of percents higher in just months, and then now, just recently, it's hit double that after being thousands of percents even lower for the past 2 years. You're seeing stuff like 20,000% gains in 1 year, like
People are just seeing like looking at it. and it's even-
$10 with a 20,000% gain.
That's like it's wild because even the government's like, shit, let's start making our own cryptocurrency.
Well,
and
so the
start-
thing with that too is it's like conflicting views. Like the IRS wants to tax it. Certain governments want to like abolish it because they can't really control who's got it and who can't got it, or who can't have it. And people are using it to buy things because it's untraceable money. So like on the black market, it's used to purchase stuff. So like just the fact that the government can't control
they
it, they
hate
hate
not
it.
being able to keep tabs on
yeah.
shit.
The government may be democratically elected officials to a certain extent, but if you don't think that they like the control and like having power, like you're wrong. and it goes back thousands of years. There's never been a major world power that wasn't controlled by a few people. There's not just like this huge world power that everybody's holding hands together, like we can just do this together without anybody having any gains or power or anything like that. No, behind the scenes, like families have continued to control everybody.
Everything's a bloodline thing. It really is.
And it's easy when you've got media like we've got now that you can really just tell them to say anything, and you can just keep everybody at each other's necks when there's this whole 50-50 thing. The problem with like race baiting or like creating this fake problem where everybody's always at each other's necks is when there are quote unquote problems, people look to government to fix it.
Yeah.
And if we're always looking to the government to fix it, we're always giving them more power. Because if there's always a problem, then we need fixes. So they're like, oh, more laws, more legislation, more checks and balances for us, less for you, since there's all these problems. And then they just keep producing problems and problems and problems.
And just like hindsight's 2020, like these people were agreeing to a lot of these checks and balances. I'm like, hey, when you see stuff start playing out the way you think that's infringing upon your rights, then you're going to be angry again. But it's like, you remember back in 2020 when you voted for this and you were all hyped about this, but now you're looking at this with the mind of someone with 15 more years of experience and knowledge and understand how things go on. You're like, well, damn, I was a dumbass. Like,
I was watching a video on this lady who had voted for Biden, and her husband lost his job because he closed down the Keystone Pipeline, and she was asking a friend, like, is it my fault he lost his job? And she's like, yes, it's your fault. You voted for this. Like, you're the reason your husband lost his job. And I mean, it's kind of true. Like, it's horrible too, because like whether you agree with the
husband
repercussions,
that you were arguing with because he wanted to vote for Trump, and you fucking, hey, no pussy for you because I'm voting for Biden. Well, Biden won, and fucking guess what?
Like,
no, nothing
like,
for you anymore. Period. Now you got to get a job, bitch.
It's so wrong. It's like apparently we're in COVID, and it's horrible for the market. Everybody's losing their jobs. Yet they're cheering him on for shutting down the pipeline, which is closing down 10,000 jobs right there, American jobs, ruining more people's lives. And this whole like lockdown and stuff, like whether it's safer for your health or not is up in the air, but it's definitely not in terms of mental health because, you know, the amount of suicides has increased double from 2019 to 2020, and even the deaths annually. 2019 to 2020, like, oh, it's been the worst pandemic ever. The deaths from 2020 only increased 40,000 from 2019. Suicides increased like 56,000 from 2019 to 2020. So if you don't even account for the suicides, there's been less deaths in 2020 than in 2019. It's just like people let everybody control them psychologically, that there's this huge problem and the world's coming down.
Psychological warfare, bro.
Yeah, it's why it's so dangerous to just believe what you can, but also why it's so likely that these media outlets are controlled by these powerful figures, because they can control everyone. Just look at what everyone does. Like, if the news never told anybody about anything, they really won't believe it. Like, I've never seen that online. It cannot be true.
Yeah.
And
That's whole, I look at it like, in the past, decade, how much, like, weirdness has gone on in our culture. Example, like, think of it in The Anonymous. Like, think of V for Vendetta. You think of that scenario, you're like, man, that could only happen in a movie. And we're having that happen on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. And it's so surreal, because you're looking at that like, this only happens in a movie, and you're like, life is literally be turning into this.
It was funny because as a kid, when I was growing up, generally we were in actually pretty calm times. Like, yeah, technically we were at war in the Middle East, but like it was almost nothing at the point I was like growing up, because it was like, I'm talking like 2010 to 2015. Nothing really was happening, and we killed Bin Laden. Woo! Actually, conspiracy theory on Bin Laden, apparently, kind of sidetracked, but made me think. There was medical reports of a hospital in the Middle East that said that Bin Laden actually died in 2002 from I think it was like a heart disease. And they knew that he died, but they wanted to paint the picture that he was still at large to sort of increase the push in the
Yeah,
Middle East.
they could, and
And
they
terror.
couldn't let him like just die. That'd be so anticlimactic.
Right.
Know?
It
Well,
really
think
would.
about this
Yeah.
too. So in 2011, when the SEAL team, it was SEAL Team 6 that killed Bin Laden supposedly on that mission, let alone all the weird stuff that went wrong. After practicing it thousands of times, everything supposedly went wrong. Well, when they killed him, some of the people were saying like they weren't sure if it was him or not, but like they were pushing in the United States like we killed Bin Laden, that was it. And then a majority of the people on that mission had actually died later. They never made it home. There was a helicopter ride on a Chinook, on a CH-47.
Yeah, so Lone Survivor, when they got when that one RPG took out a whole Chinook of SEAL Team 6 dudes, that's like
So,
connected,
yeah.
saying that, they just
there were
wanted to
no
save
there were
everyone.
no supporting aircraft. We've been to Afghanistan. You never fly around from base to base with one single aircraft, especially with
In
an
a hot
entire,
area with one Chinook?
with
Yeah,
an
it
Never
entire
happens.
SEAL team.
Soft
SEAL
team.
team. Extremely important individuals. We know that when we travel, we split up important people across aircraft in case one gets shot down. And apparently those SEALs were talking back to their families saying that there was fishy stuff going on, that they weren't sure. There was actually an interview with one of the families, or two of the families of the fallen SEAL team members from that helicopter, and they had said that they had spoken to them that there was like a lot of sketchy stuff going around the Bin Laden mission. There was stuff being hidden from them, that they were in the dark with everything, and that they didn't think they were going to make it back. Not from the enemy, but from the good guys. Like
Yeah.
they were going to be silenced. So that's sketchy in and of itself.
Which is,
There was
it happens all the time.
It's funny because like
It really does.
when I was working at the hospital, there's this nurse who was, I think she was attached to it. She was attached to a SEAL team, and she was like, she remembered talking to her friend saying like, she was supposed to go on that mission. Now supposed to be on that Chinook, and she was like, yeah, she's like, my friend was supposed to be on that bird, and she was like, they told her to stay back because I guess she was like sick that day, and then that incident happened. I was like, that's wild. She was like, yeah, because I think I was talking about like the Q course or something, and she bring that up, and I was like, that's such a small world that you bring that up because it's like you never know what's going to happen like right around the corner.
Yeah.
There are certain conspiracy theories. I don't know the validity of them, but that sort of link Biden and the Biden and the Obama administration to actually sending a lot of money to sort of pay for the hit on that SEAL team, because there were some money transfers to some sketchy groups for arms trading right before the hit on the helicopter. So some people think that the Obama administration, I really don't know the validity on this.
Yeah.
Don't take my word for this.
Right.
But there are theories that
Speculations.
speculate that the Obama administration with Biden and everything knew that this whole Biden thing was a farce and that they didn't want it getting out, so they called the hit on the SEAL team.
Well, there's the whole, and like you talk to normal people and they'll like agree with this. There's the whole, kind of basic narrative that everyone gets that, it goes along, it's really simple. It goes along the lines of like, oh yeah, the CIA did like really horrible shady shit in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the
But
80s.
they're not like that.
The 90s.
That's the
The
craziest thing.
2010s, but they're okay now. They
They're
don't do anything bad.
Every
ever.
decade.
Yeah.
They unclassify things continually. Like further and further into the future as we
Yeah.
move in, they're like, all right, now that it's 2020,
Yeah, I
we'll
guarantee there's a lot of
unclassify the
shit.
80s stuff. And
Yeah.
they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, we did all these war crimes, these horrible things, this and that. Like,
Yeah.
they're like, oh, well, they're good now.
Yeah,
and
you
then-
guys, and nobody's
No.
been arrested. There have been no changes in terms, Have you guys heard about Operation Northwoods? You guys know about that?
Yes.
So that was a thing in the 60s under JFK, where the CIA this is declassified. I think George Mason University has it or something. They have the actual document. So like officially declassified, given by the CIA. So 100% no like anonymous leaks or anything. Like officially declassified. And the CIA had full actual plans to commit a bunch of mass shootings in Miami and to hijack 2 commercial aircraft and crash them, I think it was over the state of Washington, and blame it on Cuban communist extremists like terrorists.
Declassified,
For-
almost approved, very almost approved.
For the purpose of justifying a war, like a full land invasion against Cuba. It got approved through SecDef, through, everything, all the way up to JFK, and JFK said no. And that was a year before he got assassinated.
In terms
They were
of
like, "You're not a part of
presidential
the agenda."
assassinations as well, the Lincoln assassination has some sketch ties to it as well, because the Federal Reserve, which is a privately owned company, which obviously comes out with a lot of the money. They're the ones that print the money. It's a private organization owned by some really rich families. Abraham Lincoln wanted the Federal Reserve, because that's when it was being designed, wanted it to be a government-ran organization that was, like, obviously under the same rules and laws of all the other government organizations, so that way there can be some checks and balances with our money, and they didn't want private companies owning it. Well, shortly after Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, it became like...
Yeah, they greenlit the Federal
Yep.
Reserve, like, immediately.
As
soon as he was
kept
fucking dead.
private from those three families.
Yeah. It was like 2 days after he got assassinated. They were like, yep, go ahead with it.
Just send it. Push it through. We're good.
Yeah.
It's crazy, because you say something's going on now, like anything's going on now, and
You're crazy.
and people will tell you you're crazy. Why would anything like that happen? And then you like literally look 40 years in the past and onward back, and worse things have happened. Continually worse things have happened that we've done as the United States, that other nations have done, that weird secret societies have done. Declassified information of all these horrible things that have happened, and people think that none of that can be happening now. No, we wouldn't do that now. Like we haven't been doing that. It is crazy to me how people will just shut down the idea that anything bad could be happening behind the scenes, or that their rulers that they so graciously praise could be attached to anything bad.
Yeah.
Like just look at all the connections with Jeffrey Epstein and that fucking sketchy shit.
People were saying, like,
how we
rich
forget.
pedophiles.
Let me tell you
Yeah.
something, because especially in all my time in law enforcement, and I did work in just a simple county jail. Granted, it's a large county jail, but suicide watch is not a joke. Period. You are constantly monitored.
Especially with high-profile cases.
Yeah. We had he was the third in command of the Aryan Brotherhood in my county jail. They brought him in on a blacklist, a black bus, everything. Like, they were transporting him. We were just one of the hubs for PTS, Prisoner Transport System. He had his own fucking, we cleaned out one of our drunk tanks, and, like, we didn't put anybody in there that night. He was in there by himself and everything. Like, you fucking watch people like that. You don't give them a moment by themselves. And so all these guards, plus you have sign sheets. Like, you have to check on these people every 5 minutes, literally. Somebody has to, you're constantly hearing the door on the radio being called. It's every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, or every 15 minutes. You know what I'm saying? Depending on, like, how well you're staffed. But, like, now that jail has cameras in the cells.
The one with Jeffrey Epstein did too, and
Yeah.
it didn't release.
They were like, "Oh, the cameras went down."
Yeah.
I was like, "Shut the fuck up!"
The cameras went
always
down.
go down.
Yeah.
Huh?
The cameras went down. None of the others people near his cell heard anything.
Yeah.
All the deputies or all the COs were gone at that moment or whatnot.
Yeah,
Like,
he was able
no,
to.
somebody fucking smoked.
Yeah.
Somebody just ghosted his
He was
ass.
able to, like, hang himself, but then, like, the autopsy
It
said
literally-
there was, like, evidence of a struggle. You know,
It
like,
literally got to the point where he was this close to exposing everybody, and they got desperate enough to just fucking go after him in jail.
Just Jason
one of the
Bourne
big
his
things
ass.
too.
They were like, "Hey, we'll let
because
you
people
out."
are always asking, like, if I bring up anything to do with like a child sex ring, they're like, "Well, why in the world would that even be a thing?"
Yeah, before
Let alone,
Epstein, people were like, "No way, dude! Like, no way!" And then
But-
they're like, "Yeah, the Prince of, who was it? Like, the Prince of Wales or something was like
Yeah.
fucking 10-year-olds on the island." People
The,
were like, "No way, no way."
The thing is, too, is like in terms of not even for the pleasure of the person doing it, in terms of control. Like if you can get someone to do something like defile a child on camera,
Yeah,
you can
blackmail.
you can
them, yeah.
blackmail them to do anything.
Yeah. They've gotten like governors on that shit.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Yeah.
like, think about it. You control
that
that person,
And
if you
that
have
comes
video
back
of
to that old saying when I was like, when was the time where that politician's moral compass was compromised? And
Yeah.
there you go, because all you have to do is get a little bit of dirt on you. It's like you're compromised. Like, do what we say, we're releasing this, and you're just like, well, I'm not that person. He was like, but Tough Titty, like, hey, you did it, like, so you are that person, and everyone's gonna think you that person.
Did y'all look into? Do y'all know anything about Pizzagate?
Yeah.
With the Clinton emails.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and how they were using code that's traditionally used for child sex rings and stuff, and ordering kids and stuff, and
Yeah.
it completely lines up, and that was sort of just like a big thing until all the media was like, this is outrageous that anyone would think this. It's weird how the media always defends these elites and stuff. Not weird, but it's weird as in fucking open your eyes,
You would
people.
defend your parents too. You know what I'm saying?
Right?
Right, my pockets are getting pretty
But-
thick, you know.
Yeah, they would Clinton emails talking about how they're gonna order pizza and ice cream.
I read those.
And
They were like, hey, you want to go grab, pepperoni pizza with extra cheese from,
from places
from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m.? It's like, who
What?
gets pizza at some, undisclosed place for 5 hours? Like, why are you so specific?
one of the
with the
locations-
Bring a
that they
5-hour
had-
energy.
Yeah.
one of the
What?
pizza locations they were talking about, the logo of that place that they had changed after, was actually like
It's literally a pedophile logo.
Yeah,
The FBI had registered that like symbol as a common symbol used by pedophiles, and it was like this pizza place.
That's
as like
um,
meetup places.
That's
Yeah.
like the Lincoln Park logo. It's the I Love Boys logo.
The triangles.
Yeah. So, but it's
Yeah.
like it's not not their specific symbol, but it was like inverted in a way to be like, hey, like this is what happened to me, and they kind of bring up that one of the conspiracy theories is that's why the lead singer committed suicide.
Yeah, there was that
And
whole thing.
He
too.
was, if you look at his like the politician and him, they were like yo, that's your dad. That's 100% your dad. And he was probably like impregnated your mom, blah blah blah, had you, and he was molesting you, and you thought he was your uncle the whole entire time. Like,
Yeah.
like if you look, they put the picture side by side, like that is 100%. And they were saying, because he was also supposed to be helping expose those stuff, and he was a very big advocate of those things too, like
Yeah,
putting it out
yeah.
there.
And then he killed himself like 2 days before he was supposed to do a big show or something.
Yeah, and his wife was like, and then it's crazy because it's like people are like, this is what depression looks like, and someone who's going through struggles, like happy and blah 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 blah. I'm like, maybe sometime, like maybe that's just him genuinely happy.
Yeah.
and maybe there's like a malicious
there
intent
was
behind it.
there was someone recently. They had released some information. They whistle blew on something. I don't remember, but basically he had told the public, like he had an official public statement. He's like, I just also want to let everyone know that I am completely mentally stable. And if for
Yeah.
some reason anyone ever says I killed myself, I did not, because I would never, and I am happier than I could ever be. So just be warned.
And then he committed suicide like 2 weeks later
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah, he killed himself. Like,
There was some like
he can even leave a letter and be like, and they'd be like, nah, man, nah.
yeah,
It-
there was some like Eastern European or Russian scientist studying COVID-19 who like I think he like kept
Back
saying
in like
he was
June.
yeah,
or
he
something
kept saying
yeah.
he was onto something or whatever, and then like committed suicide by jumping out of his apartment window. I'm like, are you kidding?
The
Like,
the whole
come
COVID
up with a better
connections at the
story,
beginning
least.
have been pretty sketch.
So it's wild. My mom sent me a video, and my mom's like a very religious person. So like when she sent me certain things, and I actually do watch it, and I was just like, there's a doctor in Duke Medical, and he was just talking about COVID, and he was basically like, yeah, he's like I read this article about this back in like in our medical like field that gets circulated through us like maybe like 5-10 years ago.
Yeah.
He was like, I remember this, and this. He was like, it's a heightened version of like, they take like genes of AIDS and something else. He was like, I remember reading documents on this, and they were presenting it, and he was
the
like,
patent.
Yeah.
he was talking about like, hey, it started here, and then once it reached a certain level that they were like, it's crossing legal lines in the U.S., it got shipped out.
Yeah, because
The,
China has
China.
no restrictions on any of
Yeah.
that. They test anything.
So
Yeah.
even when I was in that EMT class, there's a whole page devoted to the COVID virus with airborne pathogens and shit like that.
It's been continually
fucking book was
studied at the
published
Wuhan
in
laboratory
The 90s.
Yeah.
for years.
They're
The,
doing good though.
Wuhan is
They're doing
completely
great right
COVID
now.
free right
They're
now.
doing great.
Most of China is. They're one of the only places that are. The I was talking to
Yeah,
Matt.
they're having like
China.
raves and shit in Wuhan, where it
Yeah.
started. They're having like raves and just partying.
I was talking to Matt because I was actually just studying global pandemics and disease in my history class in ancient times, and sort of like
I mean, there's a pandemic every like 100 years.
right, and they can really destroy nations, and that's the only like thing that actually caused certain empires that to collapse. Like the Roman Empire took big hits, like the plague of Justinian and stuff like that. And different plagues of the time would take out like 70 to 80% of the population. It's almost
And other empires would move in.
Right,
and
right.
Fucking
And
clear, salt and burn the earth and just take over.
pandemics are one of the easiest ways to convert power from one entity to another. Like, sometimes the only way without like killing a ton of people, you know what I mean? Because it sort of does the job for you. But even in terms of like control, even if it's not killing people, you can use it because like you can see now that laws don't mean shit when it comes to medical.
Yeah.
Like they're like, well, yeah, that's the law, but in the name of COVID,
Releasing like convicted murderers and shit. They're like, oh, we don't. They killed like a mom and her child, but like we don't want them.
we don't want them to
catching
catch
prisons,
COVID
you
in
know?
prison.
Yeah, it's
The
classic.
fucking
I
nursing
fucking
homes
left
in
out
New
with it.
York, that's another story. They can
Yeah.
all die. But prison? No. We're going to release these murderers. But
I was reading a list. It was like really fucked up. I was reading like a whole list for the past like 2 or 3 months of like actual convicted murderers and rapists who had been let off the hook because of COVID and then had, you know, murdered or raped like 3 more people. Like it was really fucked up.
They were like, "Wait, what? This is my golden ticket? All right, peace. I'm out."
yeah. But basically, it's just like very easily could have been manufactured and released on purpose as a system of practice or just as a system of control. Like, just from all of the
Well, I
things
mean,
that
if you think about it, that's
how
the
much
control's completely
power
shifted.
the billionaires and the government has gained
the
just
last
from COVID
year,
alone, right? And how certain people like Fauci, like just became like extremely rich and powerful because they're the COVID spokesperson.
All the way back, I don't know if any of you guys remember, there was like a really big pro Second Amendment rally in Virginia, and against the governor. And you know, this really big rally they'd like happened the first time, and then there was an even bigger one scheduled. But then COVID happened, and the state of Virginia was like, "No, you can't hold protests anymore."
I mean,
and so they banned the protest, and then they passed all the gun laws because nobody could protest about it.
Yeah, that was in Virginia. It was like 10,000 people had a pro-gun rally. They all came armed. It was super peaceful, which all the news were like, it's going to be deadly. We're going to
Yeah.
basically ban guns
Yeah.
after this.
Yeah.
Nothing happened, and they were mad about it. The media was mad that nobody killed anyone at this gun rally because they all, for some reason, religiously want civilians not to have guns. But
It was
they
like
want
how they hyped up the release of the Joker. If you guys remember that,
Yeah.
all the media was like, "Oh, there's going to be so many mass shootings. Like, oh, this is
Anarchy's
terrible,"
gonna
and then
break
like
out.
nothing happened. You know,
So then, the Virginia governor
They're
passed
being
all these
religious.
gun laws after the rally of
Yeah, when
everybody
nobody could
marching
do
at the
anything.
Virginia Capitol Hill because COVID happened. And he said, it now is not the time to protest. If a governor's telling you now is not the time to protest, maybe it is.
yeah.
And then, but like basically COVID could be solely responsible for Biden getting elected because
Yeah.
whoever's in power when COVID happens, we can put all the blame on him. Like, look at how they paint Trump.
Like whenever he said a few
That's
months
why they
ago,
want
I
that
have a
stimulus
complete, I have a complete plan to, you know, combat COVID and all this, and then he just said, I don't know what, like 3 or 4 days ago, he's like, well, we can't, there's nothing.
Yeah,
we
he
can
was
do.
like, "There's literally
Yeah.
nothing we can do
Yeah.
about it for
Yeah.
the next 6 months."
Biden-
That was his biggest fucking
Biden's-
thing. He's like, I can combat.
Yeah, he's like, I've got a
combat
plan,
COVID."
which, like, why not share it with us? Well, I'll tell you if you elect me, but
Yeah.
if not, I keep it to myself. He gets elected, and he's like, oh, no, I didn't have a plan.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do.
That was like the whole stimulus check thing was like a big like they were afraid to put out another check because they were like, well, if we put out another check during Trump's administration, like he's guaranteed to get back in office.
Yeah.
They're afraid of that, man.
Yeah.
The moves being made right now through executive orders are kind of sketch too. But I do want to get into a couple more
Ooh,
Up
y'all
in the air conspiracy theories.
Y'all ready for my headcanon right now?
I'm ready.
All right, let's
All right,
do
so
it.
I bring this up last time, and when Blake was here. So, me as being the dark-skinned brother to my fair-skinned brother.
Wait, you're black?
Yeah. Dark-skinned brother.
The
to my
listeners don't
fair-skinned-
know this.
To my fair-skinned brothers.
Well, fuck, they thought I was black.
All right.
Is that the comments? The
So-
comment section?
No, they
I've
just
had
probably
this-
hear me.
I've had this running hypothesis in theory, and a lot of it's headcanon, and it's just kind of like, just based on information I think, is I don't think white people are indigenous to Earth. And I say this because he was
I didn't
like,
read that on the internet. It's not true.
yeah, see, right?
I'm listening.
So, like, it's not trying to be like, hey, like, I don't, like, white people are this and that. And it's like, based on, like, evolution, if we go on, like, the Darwin theory and everything. Is it Darwin?
Mhm.
Yeah, the Darwin theory, basically, and
Mr. Charles.
how evolution works. Basically, an albino creature has a less likely ability to sustain itself and survive in a natural environment.
They kill albino people in Africa. Like, if someone's born up, they're just like, he's from a witch or something.
He's a demon. So with that being said, I was like, okay, if we have to base it on our environment and typically how, and I based it on like evolution. I was like, well, based on climate change, weather, location, so on and so forth, you'd be like, hey, genetically, I would evolve to better benefit myself in these environments. Melanin in the skin also like helps counteract, defeat some of the UV rays we get from the sun.
Yeah.
And you were like, okay, so that would be something naturally that I would feel would be like, hey, through evolution, that would become a predominant trait. So I'm kind of going from there and looking at it's like, okay, so I was like, all right, you take that. He was like, also at the same time, it's like when you look at, and I had to this last part I had to like truly do research on because I was like, well, everyone's like, well, Blake last time it was like, well, based on the equator and this, that, and that. And I'm like, hey, I don't know all that stuff. Like maybe I need to do a little more research. But I was like, well, based on like every documentary I've seen, a little bit of research I've done here and there, I was like, we're a white tribes. Like, and it made me think. It was like, well, you look back in history and I'm like, Indians are savages, black people are savages, this person's savages, and I'm like, okay, there's a lot of dark skinned tribes. I'm like, where are white tribes? Like, I kind of Google. I'm like, maybe this is a question I've never asked myself, and maybe there's
So like the oldest white people tribes typically are like Vikings, things like that.
Well,
But if
even
you look
older
at,
than
like,
that, I think it'd be like maybe the German barbarians that like attacked Rome. Maybe, I don't know.
So
I don't
see.
know.
I think this is where I have to do
but
more
like if you
research.
look at like
I
the
have no
really,
idea.
really ancient
But
civilizations,
it's a question that I'm like, I've never asked.
if you look at the real ancient civilizations in terms of like these are the oldest known civilizations and stuff, none of them are white.
yeah,
Like if you
Right.
look at Sumerians and the
Yeah.
They're all Mediterraneans
Egyptians.
or
Yeah.
Arabs,
Yeah.
pretty much.
and so that even takes me a little bit further of why I'm like, okay, maybe white people are indigenous to Earth. When you start looking at tribesmen and how they live off the land, interact with the land, utilize every single resource they possibly can to be like, hey, I'm gonna use, if I kill this animal, I'm going to use its hide, its skin,
Yeah,
its
yeah.
muscle, its bones, so on and so forth. And if you think like migration and people moving, say, from Europe over to other continents, it's a lot of terraforming. So instead of like, hey, live off the land like the savages, it's more like, hey, I'm going to terraform this
Yeah,
to make my
establish stuff.
comfortability for myself. So
a lot of that
introduce
had to do
technology.
with actually it was like the Age of Discovery. I was talking
Yeah.
to him about earlier.
Mm.
It's because they closed the Ottoman Empire, shut down the Silk Roads
Okay.
because they didn't want trade with the Western societies anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But they relied heavily on all of their imports.
Mm-hmm.
So then it was sort of forced them to go search out and
Yeah,
find new
push
lands,
out there.
and then that's when they influenced all of them, like because they obviously were really strong in their ideals and had bigger civilization than some of the places they were traveling to. So they pushed their ideas on them and stuff. But it was basically just to find these resources that they needed because trade was shut down from the Ottoman Empire.
so
It's
It's like-
basically just like the spread of Christianity because they needed resources.
Christianity also, because of plagues, became way stronger. And in fact, one of the plagues, the plague of Cyprian, was actually. So they don't know too much on it because the traditional record keeper, in terms of like health and stuff, this civilization at the time, it was actually like priests and stuff who did record keeping. So it was Saint Cyprian who actually recorded most of the stuff from the Plague of Cyprian. That's why it's been called that. It's not actually, but they had from his records and stuff. It was seen as the end of the world, and every single people group basically hid and died and stuff, except for Christianity. They were the only ones who promised that, one, there was like a route afterwards, and they were the only ones who stayed around and helped.
Well, I mean, that's one, like, I can't debunk religion whatsoever, because I mean, I have my own religious beliefs and everything, but that's like the earliest form of government is the clergy.
Yeah.
So you got to think, like, even if it's a great thing, you get evil men who pretend to be pretend to be good, and they use it to their own advantage.
Well, that's with the Egyptian, the pharaohs, in ancient Egyptian. So they later became like the pharaohs were appointed by God or their gods.
Well, it was like the pharaohs are literally
before
the
that.
gods.
So in early ancient Egypt, it was
themselves.
pharaohs
like,
said that they were gods,
serving them
and so
some of them.
the way that they were easily able to control their entire nation was the fact that they said they were gods, and then they would appoint viziers as tax collectors, allowed them to keep some of the taxes that they collected for power and such, and then they would have priests as well to sort of say that, oh, this pharaoh said this, and like these are the consequences, and they would paint depictions of them defeating like thousands of enemies single-handedly to create this fear aspect of it. Also, that these pharaohs could sort of just make good.
I mean, just look at how like early Christians, which, I mean, yeah, when it comes to Lucifer, he did rebel against God and everything, but also Lucifer isn't at his core evil. He's not evil. He was God's right-hand angel, one of his most beautiful angels.
He was the most
beloved angel.
He
powerful.
Punished, yeah, well, not
in
the
a
most
sense,
powerful,
because he thought that he was more powerful than God.
Right, but he still does punish evil. But
So-
people, they also labeled him the devil and the beast, when the beast is a completely different entity
Right.
in hell that was there since the beginning. But Lucifer was just caged in hell with the beast.
I always
He's
found
not-
it really interesting about how the fallen angels, how Lucifer actually had a portion of angels
Right.
that somewhat supported his cause,
It was a third.
being the demons. It was a
Yeah.
third, and so like that's what fallen angels were,
Yeah.
and that's actually where.
They became the first demons.
So
So apparently they slept with humans,
Yep.
and that's where a lot of,
The
if you look
Nephilim
at
and
the
shit.
Nephilim, which are like giants and stuff, if you look at the Book of Enoch, which the first like 34 chapters of the Book of Enoch are said to be actually legit, and like the next like 40 chapters are formulated by other authors, but the first 30 chapters or so talk about, it's like one of the few accounts where they actually talk about fallen angels and their spread of knowledge to humanity, and they're the ones who taught like engineering and science.
So
and
there's
things like that.
supposed connections to the flood, and like that the Lord caused
He was trying to wipe away.
that the Lord caused the flood because demons
get
had
rid of
been
wanted to kill them, yeah.
had been
Yeah.
mixing with humans, and
Yeah.
there were just so many like
And
Which also explains
and Noah
why-
was one of the few family lines that weren't mixed with
Yeah.
them.
Right, which also explains like some of the like the lifespans and whatnot of
These are
hundreds
thousands
of years.
Thousands
Yeah.
of years.
yeah
Right.
because I think somewhere in the Old Testament, like right along that storyline, it's like, you know, that the Lord said that after this flood or whatever, is like sometime
120
around that.
years is the new like.
It's like 123 or 124. Like no human will ever live past that again,
Yep.
or something.
and it's actually like if you look at the
Yeah.
oldest people who've ever lived, it's like
Yeah.
123, 124 years old. It is very interesting. The
But
In
what
terms
I was
of-
basically getting at is there's always been some form of corruption in any government, no matter how justified or their cause or whatnot. Evil is always going to root in and eventually take over, pretty much, for the majority of the like.
Yeah, well, I mean, especially if
Essence.
you believe in like a sin nature, you know, which
Yeah.
I ascribe to. Like, you know, if there's a human, I believe there's potential for evil.
If there's
Like
a human, there
always.
is evil. There's no
Yeah.
potential. There at the core, we're not good people.
Yeah, yeah,
We're not
innately
good at the core.
I believe we're innately good.
yeah. I mean, I
through
believe we're inherently
circumstances.
evil.
I mean, but instinctually we're not good. If somebody comes through that fucking door right there, like say some fucking poor hobo comes walking off the street and he's got like a little knife or something like that. Like,
that's survival instinct. I wouldn't
I'm
say that's the name
gonna
of evil,
smoke his ass right there.
but
like,
that's more survival instincts.
exactly,
I would look at
but
it.
it's
I wouldn't call
also
survival.
it's also
instinctually.
instinctual. Survival is instinctual.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say your survivability, putting your survivability over like an unknown threat is instinctually evil.
Well, I like it's the idea of that.
Depending
like,
on
it's
who you
almost like
ask.
base level. It's
Yeah.
the idea of freedom of thought, right? You choose your route. There is this good and there is this evil, and humans are like this middle line with the ability to choose. Like you have
we have a moral compass.
Yeah.
you have the feelings of the fleshly desires, but you also understand at your core when you're doing something wrong. It almost feels wrong to do evil, and it's like that you get to choose. And so like I wouldn't
Some
say
people
we're
indulge in it, some people don't.
innately evil or good, although everyone has sinned. Everyone does make bad decisions, but people do choose good over evil oftentimes.
I was always told that as individuals, people are the amazing creatures on this earth that could possibly walk. As a species, we should be fucking eradicated. We're an infestation. But it's like the same thing. It's like you have to look at. It's like there are glimmers of good people within all this stuff, and and this is more me coming from like environments dictating people's way of life and like government and so on and so forth, and people just genuinely like, hey, I just want to take care of my family, be happy, and make a little bit of money, and that's it, and I'll be good. And you can't do that, so that makes me turn to another route, which society deems is not good. But you're like, hey, I'm just doing primal instincts of survivability, taking care of my kin.
What's interesting is if you look at public education, what they teach you, the meaning of
Indentured
life is,
servitude.
and what everything's supposed to be, and then who's sort of dictating what public education is about, and how like the idea of like evolution and how we're just basically not really anything. We're kind of pointless creatures is just mass taught.
You just
now
you die, and that's it.
Yeah, and it's just like you have to do your part to take care of Earth, but you're also like there's no spiritual.
But that's
stuff.
that's always been a big question to me. Is like everyone's like trying to find their meaning in life, and maybe it's like I think it's probably a little bit. It varies from person to person because everyone's going to have their own different meaning of life. But it's like at the end of the day, it was like genuinely, if my life like there's nothing, I go to the great void, and that's it. After I die, like that's pretty underwhelming. Like I attained consciousness, I came into this world, and then once it's done, that's it.
That's the thing. Like, I feel like sometimes I honestly feel like it's just so simple. Like you look at, the moon, or you really just like watch a deer for a while. Or you look at an ant who has a brain, who knows how fucking small, who just like knows how to help build an anthill.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't need to grow up for 18 years and have his parents teach him how to do it. Like he's just born and he just knows what the fuck to do.
We are the only
know?
species on this planet that has to learn how to survive.
Yet are more advanced than every other species on Earth.
Yes.
On our capabilities, and it goes to show.
Most fragile, but also the most.
Right.
Advanced.
We actually have the ability to pick and choose routes and teach routes and influence each other.
Like fundamentally, I believe there's like a point to things.
Yeah.
Just like in general, like I believe there's a point to things.
Mass simulation
The,
of a consciousness.
But what I find is interesting is one of the families that started the Federal Reserve, the Rockefellers, and run a global banking system. So outrageously wealthy family.
Which, by the way, the UN built their headquarters on. Rockefeller donated the land for the UN headquarters, by the way.
Another interesting fact.
Go ahead, yeah.
The Museum of Jerusalem, or what was the Museum of Jerusalem, is now the Rockefeller Museum, and it houses a few interesting artifacts, if you will. It houses the earliest found human bodies that predate evolution's timeline in terms of when humans came. It has bodies that carbon date, which who knows the validity of the process of carbon dating, but carbon date like 400,000 years ago, and they found it in an organized burial site. like 7 people, and
So there was obviously structure. Not only does it go way beyond what they thought that we appeared, but they already had structure, class, fucking some type of like
right.
idea of a family,
And
then just the idea to bury somebody
and it was
anyways.
burial site. It
Yeah.
wasn't a death, like they died there.
It wasn't a
like it was an
graveyard,
organized burial site
Yeah.
of 7 individuals. They also, in the Rockefeller Museum now, house the what are those documents called that formed the Bible? It was the because there's 3 documents they pulled from that sort of constructed the Bible. It's the Priest Proclamation, and then
I have no
there's
idea.
the scrolls
The
that
Dead Sea Scrolls.
The Dead Sea Scrolls are
Oh.
housed at the
So
Rockefeller
those
Museum as well.
just a forward. Those are slightly contested.
Yeah,
Slightly.
right.
Yeah.
But the Dead Sea Scrolls are also housed there, and the Rockefellers own that. And it's just like this extremely rich and powerful family who has actually supported financially the push of the idea of evolution to everybody, who owns all of these things that sort of counteract what he's pushing on everyone else. And if you look at a lot of these powerful families, like whether they agree with a certain religion or not, they do things like in these clubs and stuff that all have spiritual
Yeah, they all have
context.
religious, like whether it's like completely satanic or not. Like a lot of these things, they all have
A
spiritual
spiritual
aspects.
Whether it's
like
weird
there's something
rituals or
more,
symbols,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I mean, like I said, I mean, this is just to me personally, but like it seems obvious, like if you just like look at the way that animals behave or the way that like kids behave.
Speaking
or
of the
trees,
CIA, I don't the
Good old hard segue.
Yeah.
they had actually used prisoners and pumped them full of LSD. I think it was back in the 60s, and then just mass recorded everything they saw, and are actually known to have been like attempting some spiritual portals with the use of psychedelics, and they would pump deadly amounts of psychedelics into prisoners and just record everything they saw, and like that whole program's been declassified as well.
I will say this, maybe this is a unique experience for me, but it seems like universal if you just talk to, hippies who just take psychedelics all the time. Like, I'll say this for my personal experience, like psychedelics, like acid and shrooms, 100% make you think, like regardless of what you believe, because I have, friends who don't believe in much or believe in completely different things. But like acid and shrooms and psychedelics in general, it 100% makes you feel like you're like in a spiritually open like realm. Like you understand things in terms of like big stories, or
It is
like
interesting.
Things that make sense like that.
It is interesting. Johns Hopkins University did a study on the effects of psilocybin, which is the active ingredient in mushrooms. It's the thing that basically gives you the psychedelic experience. Johns Hopkins did a study to see how that affected people dealing with addiction. And a one-time use of psilocybin resulted in an 87% success rate in stopping addiction to people who had lifelong addictions to tobacco and alcohol. One-time use. People were able to cold turkey stop addictions with no regular cold turkey symptoms that you would normally see when people stopped addictions of that nature. But also interesting with it, they also noted that there was a permanent personality change to people who had these spiritual experiences, because not everyone had a spiritual experience. It was like something like 10% didn't, but otherworldly experience like 90% did. And of them, almost all of them had a permanent personality change, changing their creative mind. They were like way more creative, and in terms of how they reacted to stuff, it was like from a more observant perspective. They're quicker to stop and think about it rather than just react immediately. And that was like a permanent personality change, which is weird that one like simple chemical can change the scope of who someone is permanently.
How do you feel?
I can attest to the accuracy. But it is interesting, just like all of this stuff that the government has regulation on, and the things that they don't have regulation
It's all the
on.
good shit. Full auto weapons.
Full auto weapons.
They all say no. It sucks. You know. Let us just have fun. Jeez.
Public nudity.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
I just want a fucking 240 and some acid and to be naked.
Yeah.
While eating a cheeseburger.
Yeah.
With
That'd be perfect. Are you kidding me?
with my vehicle that does not fit any code or regulation.
Yeah.
I want to be able to drive on the road and the trees.
The tree. Maybe over the tree.
No, so did y'all see? I don't remember the guy's name, but he had started a muffler shop in his town, and
Talking about the bulldozer guy.
yeah, the bulldozer guy.
Yeah.
Killdozer.
Yeah, so he had started a muffler shop in his town, but basically the city had built around him so that people couldn't get directly to his shop anymore. So he's paved his own like little roadway connecting to the highway so that people could get to his shop. And it was on his land, but because it connected to the highway, like it was against so many regulations, so they basically tried to like shut down his store and everything like that, ruin his life because he made a decision without the government's approval. And you know, they're our parents. Nothing goes unless they say so, because they actually do control us. But he ended up making this bulletproof bulldozer and destroying all the businesses built around his business.
He's really careful
and
not to kill people too.
he was very careful not to.
Yeah.
And he got shot at and everything, and like obviously nothing happened. He ended up killing himself at
Oh,
the end of it.
Yeah, because he finally got stuck. He got hung up, so he just took his own life with a shotgun that he had in there.
But
Yeah, him and Sky King were two good stories.
Sky King, let me hear that. I don't think I know about that one.
It was basically this. I think it was this dude in some like northwestern airport. Maybe it was Alaska.
It was
or
Washington.
Somewhere else. It was Washington. Yeah,
it was Washington State.
It was this dude who just worked as a.
He loaded cargo on
Yeah, he was just a
747s.
cargo guy on at some airport, and he eventually just got really upset. I think he was getting upset about all the affirmative action or something at like his airport. It was something like that. I can't remember exactly what, but he was getting upset over something about the job market in his area that the federal government was just like paving over completely, and he stole a fucking 747.
He watched YouTube videos for the course of about 10 weeks and taught himself how to fly
Yeah,
747.
he taught himself how to fly.
And while on board one of them, because he was doing like the routine maintenance type stuff, he
stole this plane. Nobody else was on it. It was just him. But he stole a full, airplane.
Is that the one that was never found, or
No,
okay.
he flew it off, and he did fucking barrel rolls, like
he did an entire flip
flips with
until he
it,
crashed into
did
an island
everything, and like
on purpose.
And they sent like jets after him, and they were like talking to him on the
There were two
radio.
F-16s that trailed him.
Yeah, and they were talking to him on the radio. They were like, hey, like, what the fuck? And he's like, I'm not gonna hurt anybody. I'm not doing anything.
They
like,
were negotiating to get him to land the aircraft.
Yeah, he was like, this is just like a protest against like my work environment because the government has been like on some bullshit or whatever.
Yeah, he basically said, like, he was joking too while he was like flying around talking to them. He's like, you think if I land this thing they'll give me a job as a pilot? Probably not. And then they're like, listen, like, just land it, everything will be okay. And he's like,
He was like, you'll probably just arrest me. And they were like silent, and he was like, yeah, fuck you.
that's what I thought.
Yeah, I'm gonna spend the rest of my life in prison. Yeah, okay.
But
fuck
yeah,
you.
he's like, it was pretty sad though listening to him talk, because he's like, just things have kind of gotten to me. I'm really sorry to everyone that's ever like supported me or loved me, but I just can't take it anymore. And then there was like footage of people like, oh, what's that plane doing? And then there's like F-16s following and stuff. But yeah, he ended up doing a whole fucking 360 loop and crashing into an island.
Why didn't he have a movie?
Hey,
because it goes against the fucking agenda. That's why.
That's true. That would be. I would watch that.
Hollywood is sketch. Do y'all know about?
Fuck Hollywood, dude.
So there was
Blake
a
wants to get into
New
that world.
Zealand
Fuck
citizen
Hollywood.
who came out with Mega Upload. It was a website that accounted for 8% of all the internet's use when in its prime in the whole world. And it was a way to transfer big video files because the guy, he would record races, cross-country races of his, and there was no way for him to transport the videos over the internet to his friends.
Yeah.
So he was well off. He had made a couple tech companies and stuff, and he had actually came up with some of the patents for like car phones and things like that.
He's a really smart guy.
Yeah, and so then he was like, basically, if there's an issue, like he wants a product, he builds an entire company around the product, and he makes money from it. And so he came up with Mega Upload, and it was one of the biggest websites that have ever been like made and utilized, and it would basically allow you to transfer large media files from one individual to another individual. And he basically, people would try and send, obviously copyright material too, and so he's a New Zealand citizen. He ended up making some changes to his website so that Hollywood, because Hollywood was basically saying, hey, we don't want you to be able to sue this. We want to like sue you because we're losing money from people sending copyrighted material. So he gave Motion Picture Associations of America and like a bunch of other film producing agencies the complete power to delete any information that they thought was copyrighted without even checking it. So like literally he's like, listen, like if y'all see anything and you think it's copyrighted and you like say remove this, it'll get removed. You don't even have to like check it through our system, like, because he's like, I don't want copyrighted stuff being sent. He's like, I solely want this for people who want to utilize it, and we have like subscription services so that people can send even bigger files or not have limited. So anyway, he was making a lot of money from it, but
He gave him too much power.
the Motion Picture Association of America had actually threatened the federal government and said that they needed to arrest him and close down his business, or they would stop funding the Democratic candidates in presidential runs because they sent so much freaking money to the Democrats. And they said, we're going to stop funding this if you don't arrest him. And they sent so much money that they actually sent FBI agents. They told New Zealand to stick it. They're going to anyway, because New Zealand's like, no, this isn't your jurisdiction. It's our fucking country.
Yeah.
And
yeah, they literally sent American FBI agents
to a place, to a website that actually had 90% of the access was not even the United States. But because, and Hollywood had complete control over copyright stuff, and they still didn't want to lose any money. And so Hollywood basically convinced the federal government to send FBI agents to New Zealand, and then with the New Zealand Special Forces and FBI agents, 72 of them invaded his home with helicopters and armored vehicles and M4s and like complete get up. They had the entire layout of his home because he had a secret room that he was hiding in, and they're like, we knew where that was the whole time. And without any like justifiable warrants or anything like that. So Kim.com was the guy, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And he, anyway, cut the files to his data center so that they couldn't get it before they arrived, because I guess he knew that they were coming. But 72 of them invaded his house. They violently arrested him and kicked him on the ground, like beat the shit out of him. And then, like, they acted as if he was like a high-value terrorist.
Yeah, he's some like computer nerd who's just like no physical threat whatsoever.
And then he's for 10 years been facing this lawsuit and extradition to the United States for it was third-party copyright infringement, which YouTube actually had the same suit filed against them, but it wasn't a criminal suit because there was no violence or anything like that. So it was a civil suit filed against them in which they actually said, like, you aren't in control of your users, so you're not held accountable so long as you have these rules in place, and if you see it, you ban them. And because it's third-party copyright infringement, so it's not them that's doing it. That happened before this, and it was the same thing they were trying to get on him, but it was a criminal suit against him as an individual for third-party copyright infringement because his users did that too, and they were holding him accountable for it, and ended up trying to. I'm not sure if they extradited him or not to the U.S., but I'm pretty sure they tried to throw him in U.S. prison
federal prison
as a U.S. citizen because people on his service shared Hollywood movies.
Basically, globally, no matter where the fuck it is, like this or fucking Waco, like, if you're the little man and you get away with something, they fucking hate you.
They do.
Yeah.
Like,
They fucking
straight
do.
up.
That's their money, and they will do anything to stop you.
Just like The stock market.
Yeah.
Right.
It literally doesn't matter like who the fuck you are, what fucking race you are, what fucking politics you have. Like if you're the little guy and you fucking make a buck,
You're like,
they fucking
and
hate
you
you.
shortchanged me?
Lord
Yeah,
Rothschild
they
the
fucking hate
First,
you.
who started the Rothschild family and the global banking business that it is now, and they have over 57 mansions on 1,000-acre properties across the world, that are all like $10 to $50 million per. Those are just all their residences, plus the hundreds of millions of dollars of art and stuff they have on each residence, and the trillions of dollars a year they make in banking. Lord Rothschild I started that by getting into the Bank of England, sort of helping start the Bank of England as a prominent figure. He has a quote saying, "It doesn't matter what puppet sits on the throne. He who controls the money has all the power, and I control the money." And that's sort of how it happens. Like, people with money do typically push for certain people to get elected because it's in their best interest. That's why you see third-party political figures not make it into office, not because people wouldn't support them, but nobody even knows about them because they don't get media time, because they have no money behind them, and all these different groups who are sort of pushing for them to get seen. And so basically, like I said, if you follow the money, if you follow the numbers, you can sort of see who's in power and why they do things. And it sort of makes sense as to all this sketch stuff that's happening behind the scenes. And we're never going to be able to do anything about it.
Yeah, and so by the way, if you guys ever wondered why the fuck like America seems to give a fuck about Israel over the past like 20 years, it's because literally the largest like campaign donor to presidential campaigns is just some Jewish guy who like loves Israel. Like that's why we talk about Israel all the time. It's because there's some dude who gives $30 million.
If you look at
to a campaign.
the Clinton emails on WikiLeaks, like, a lot of the preparation for public events is talking about like, hey, make sure you say publicly like all the support we have for Israel and this and that, because we don't want to lose their
money.
funding.
Yeah.
And like, it's so I think it was the 6-Day War. Do y'all know what that is?
Yeah.
Between Israel and Egypt. So that happened, I don't know, 40, 50 years ago, the 6-Day War between Israel and Egypt. And Israel's obviously an ally of the United States. Israel had open hatred towards Egypt and reasons to attack them. The U.S. said, hey, you cannot attack them unless they attack you first. Israel cut all communications with the United States for 24 hours and then proceeded to bomb a large portion of Egypt, starting the 6-Day War. While Egypt and Israel were in this battle with each other, the U.S. sent a communications vessel in what's known as national water, because it was off the coast by a certain amount. So it's national water, so it's not Israel's land. So they were in national waters. U.S. sent a vessel. Israel, in their official statement, said they thought it was an Egyptian vessel, even though it had U.S. writing on it, U.S. flag. And the people on the boat all publicly said that the Israelis knew it was an American vessel, yet Israel shot it with like 6 torpedoes from submarines and multiple gun runs and ended up killing like 53 Americans.
Yeah, the USS Liberty incident.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then ended up calling it, and they're like, oh, we didn't know you were an American vessel. The Americans literally were under a lot of scrutiny, from the families and such, like, hey, you need to, like, obviously make them pay for this. They're like, no, we forgive them. Like, obviously it was a mistake. And, like, the chatter all says that, like, basically they knew it was an American vessel. They attacked it anyway, and then ended up stopping before it completely destroyed. But the U.S. would die before there were bad relations between Israel and us, so they were willing to just let it slide. Pretty sketch. All the things that people just let go or do for money or for power. It's like Operation Paperclip,
Mm-hmm.
We're willing to let go of your crimes if you help our nation. Or the Japanese Imperial Army had a group called I think I talked about this in the last podcast. They had a group called the Pandemic Prevention and Water Purification Department.
Yeah.
They did chemical experimentation on kids, and the U.S. pardoned all of them because they wanted the information. They do it with Nazis. it's not like the U.S. It's people in power who speak for the U.S. who have things to gain from this financially, or expand their reach in terms of their networking.
Globalization, even in like all the way back to World War II, was pretty crazy with like Henry Ford and the big like American business guys like financing like a shit ton of the machinery and like in Nazi Germany and like everything. Part of it is just because everything was like very interconnected from the get-go, like somewhat innocently, but still you see this constant trend of like multi-billionaires just investing in both sides all the time, so that they always come out on top.
I'll lose a little bit over here, but I'm gonna gain a lot over there.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
Yeah, exactly.
They do not care about anything that happens to the average person. We are literally there to provide them with working power and money, and an image of power.
Cannon fodder.
Yes, and it is interesting how people will literally idolize some of these people in political power.
It's like they literally don't care about you. Like they don't.
They'll say like one statement, like I stand strong
like the Army
with
saying that they care
the
about us.
4-foot Latina community,
just a number.
And then all 4-foot Latinas are like, I knew that they were.
I knew that they cared about me all along.
Yeah. And then they'll like accidentally kill like 60 Latinas, and they're like, it's okay. Like obviously they did it for this.
Like you saw after the election, if you look at like Google search results and like news headlines and stuff, and it's like Black Lives Matter, and it like spikes like fucking like a month before the election, and then ever since Joe Biden got in, it's like nothing. Yeah. Nothing you get. They're like, oh yeah, sure, they cared about us the whole time.
Yeah, it's
they dropped him like a fucking hot potato.
Yeah,
that's what they did. Like, hey, thanks for getting us here.
Yeah, thanks for the votes.
It's like what's going on with Jack Dorsey and Twitter and stuff right now. How he just banned Trump and everything like that permanently because he, according to one politician, incited an erection.
Incited an erection.
Insurrection, I mean. Sorry, a bit excited.
My Cialis is kicking in.
But, it's the media has certain biases. Sometimes financially, just sometimes it's their views get the best of them, and so they'll take things into their own hands, report on certain things in certain ways, not let other people talk or ban people.
Can I just get a spaceship and just
Hey, Elon Musk is going to take us to Mars. It's okay.
I don't even want to go to Mars. Just give me my own spaceship and just let me go.
No, I don't want to go to Mars.
Similar to your theory about white people not being from Earth, and I think I was talking to y'all after the podcast last time about the theory that no human is from Earth. We're all aliens that got dropped off.
That makes more sense to me than
anything, segueing back into that theory is like I have a couple scenarios. It's like, hey, you can be Sumerians, came from under Earth, or came from a different planet altogether, i.e. Mars.
I think it's more or less came from another
and
alien species than anything.
And that too is like, hey, there that missing link that came in there somewhere, like a little bit of
monkeying around.
Science, a little play right there, a little monkeying around, a little poking the monkey.
Yeah.
And there you go.
Oh, shit. So, my conspiracy is nowhere near.
Let's hear it.
As intricate as all these fucking billionaires and controlling everything, and I want to talk about dragons.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, were dragons real at one point?
Yes.
Yeah, I 100%.
Dragons or wyverns?
What are wyverns?
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 What are wyverns?
Wyverns.
Yeah.
What are wyverns?
So
it's the difference between if their arms are attached to the wing or
if
separate from
free,
the wing.
Yeah.
The ones that are free from the wing are dragons, where it's 4 legs and then separate wings. The ones where the wings are also their front arms, those are wyverns, otherwise known as wyverns if you're British.
But who's to say that? Yeah, who's to say that all of them weren't? You know what I'm saying?
So go. I'll let you finish. But I'll go back to
you have dragons literally in every lore in every society across
Eastern and Western.
Mm-hmm. Eastern, Western, fucking just everywhere on the planet. They have some type of fucking lore about something that looks like a dragon, a large, scaly, lizard-like animal that can fly and or i.e. breathe fire or whatnot. And there was no communication between
Yeah,
Culture.
between ancient,
Yeah.
Oriental.
Look
you
at
know,
fucking Japan in
yeah.
the medieval ages, you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like
Yeah,
And they both called
No.
the same thing.
yeah. Like granted, between the body structures there was a lot of difference, but
Yeah.
I mean that's just
it was
different
the same
parts of the
shit.
world.
It
Yeah.
was the same exact image.
Same exact fucking
Yeah.
image.
If you look at like obviously
There's different types of fucking frogs all over the world.
The
You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like,
so there's actual like art depictions in ancient times of
Yeah.
dragons and stuff, but not of dinosaurs. Some of
Right.
which that kind of did counter live with them,
Mm-hmm.
according to science. Yet there's no depictions of those or almost nothing written about those.
Only
but
mythical.
drag-
Yeah,
Dragons.
dinosaurs are fake. Dragons are real.
yeah,
yeah. Well,
So
I
the-
mean, just like the eagle. You know what I'm saying? Large. Very
Oh, you're talking about the
powerful-
fucking Thunderbird and shit?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that
see-
shit is spooky.
I
as
saw
fuck.
I saw the Thunderbird.
You
You
were
actually-
saying something about
he,
that.
He brought that
I-
up to
yeah,
me
you did
like
bring that
2
up,
years
too.
ago. Something like that.
In Washington State,
Yeah.
at the
Arizona.
age of like 11, I saw, or 10, I saw the Thunderbird, and it was flying over the Olympic State National Park, which is a temperate rainforest, one of the largest nature reserves.
That's where it's supposed to be too.
and I saw a bird with the wingspan of what, because it was really far away, but you could still obviously, using depth perception, understand
It's
how
a big-ass
large this
bird.
thing is.
Why is that bird the size of
And
a plane?
it wasn't something I just saw. I actually ran inside to grab my brother and my sister, both of which have denied this now, because they've sort of rationalized it.
Rationalized it, yeah.
But they are like, no, that was. They're like sort of question themselves. That was something else, but I'm not sure what. But I'll stand true to my memory, and I saw a bird with the wingspan. It had to have been at least like a 20 to 25 foot wingspan at a minimum. It was huge. I would say it reminded me of how like a dragon would fly.
Right.
It was top 10 coolest things I've seen.
Well, I mean, just
I
like
need to watch the
Spirit
X-Files again.
it's like with ancient birds or whatnot. Like you get full skulls of these birds along with beaks and everything, but you don't really get a lot of their bodies because their bones were hollow, so they could fly. I mean, you get some of them or some full skeletons, but the majority of them, their bones just they were hollow, so they weren't dense enough to turn into fossils.
Yeah.
So I mean, look at T-Rex skulls, huge fucking.
That's a theory
obviously,
too floating around.
obviously predator skulls.
And then their arms are super tiny, and then they
Right.
just realize that maybe those aren't how their arms are, and it would make sense. Maybe that's just the joint connecting
Yeah,
to
and
some
it
wings.
was like
Right.
however long ago that all the scientists
make-
came out. They were like, "Oh, all the dinosaurs had feathers on them."
So,
Yep.
It's like,
with that
okay.
being said, so there was somebody breaking down that if dinosaurs did exist, they would be more wyverns than like the European aspect, 'cause evolving from birds, like going that route and explaining that. But I remember this as a child. Maybe you've seen it. There is a documentary by Discovery Channel of them.
They come out with some good stuff sometimes.
This was in the 90s. I remember watching this on TV. There's a documentary in the 90s from Discovery Channel finding a dragon perfectly preserved, like in Iceland. Like they broke it down, they dissected it, everything. They were like, "Hey, this is the flap." This is
So
how
they
it's-"
tried to claim that it was like a Komodo dragon or something.
No,
like that.
they tried to say this was all because Discovery does kind of like some fiction stuff too.
Yeah.
That's what they spun it off as. Like, hey, no, that was just more like a what if thing. Like we were just like, hey, what if we found a dragon? This is how we would like. This is what it would look like. And they broke down the anatomy and everything. You can find it on YouTube too right now. I recently watched it maybe like a couple years ago.
Shit, I'll probably watch it
I'll
tonight.
probably watch
It's,
that
it's
shit.
literally
Yeah,
a
I'm gonna go
Discovery
find it.
Channel, like it's a Discovery Channel like documentary, and I was like, I remember seeing this kid like dragons are real, dragons are real. Like maybe I didn't see the first part, like this is not fictional, but I'm like, no, everything I remember from start to finish was you breaking down a dragon, saying this is where you found. They even like gave a location of where they found it.
I
mean, look
remember
at how
there was
many
a similar.
species humans have wiped out over our history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it's something. It's supposed to be estimated that like literally 99% of all living species ever are extinct currently.
And the thing is too. So they say that they found human remains anywhere from like 300 to 500,000 years old, right?
Yeah.
But they can only trace like civilization back like 7,000 years, and they can only trace like agriculture back like
It's like
5,000
40,
years.
Yeah, or
And
something like that.
and before agriculture, it was completely hunter gatherer, is what they think. And so if the civilizations, if there were major ancient civilizations that were organized, creating some of these structures and such, that because some people think that like the pyramids predate the Egyptians and they just sort of took over.
I got something for that one.
But they think that some of these ancient civilizations, you know, were huge, global in scale, and if they were living off of like hunting and things like that, some of these giant skeletons and creatures and stuff could have just been the food source for these people
The food source or the
And they could have-
competition.
or competition, and
Yeah.
but they could have fucking killed them all off.
But about the dragon thing, I was just I was remembering the same thing about like the Loch Ness monster. Like,
Yeah.
you know, a while ago too. They were
documentary?
like-
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
That-
They used to have a lot of those.
That was a good one.
yeah.
And yeah, cryptids and stuff are
They-
very interesting.
They actually got a blip from
Recently.
Yeah, recently they were like,
in
that is something.
Loch Ness Lake.
Yeah, they're like, that is something. They were like, we've scanned this lake hundreds of thousands of times. He's like,
But
"That
it's
is
it's
something."
just like the fact that like it's only so much you can actually physically see, and like who knows what's going on underground. The deepest we've ever dug was like 16 miles into the crust.
It was the Russians.
It was a
They-
borehole, and
Yeah.
and their drills melted because they couldn't get lower in that location.
The crust. What we're taught in school, all that's theorized.
Yeah.
None of it's
A lot
none
of what we're
factual.
taught in
That's-
public education is
Well, I'm talking
theory.
about like the layers of the crust and the core and
Right,
everything.
right.
All
We just
that's
assume.
a theory.
We just
It's
But
assume
I'm
huge
saying like a
fucking
lot of
theory,
things
yeah.
you're taught is theory in school,
Yeah.
and they teach it as if it's a fact
Yeah.
when it's not.
It's just like when astronomers, you know, look at a planet and they're like, oh, this, you know, like fucking bajillion miles away. You can barely see it and they're like, oh, this planet clearly has an 8% oxygen atmosphere. I'm like, give me a break, dude. Like, come on.
It's wild because it's like,
You can't even tell me what that fucking license plate
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
there
come on.
says. You know what I'm saying?
You know, it's like,
Like,
come on.
okay.
you can see across the
You
galaxies.
know that they have
You're also
8%
telling-
oxygen on that planet.
Yeah, it's like
yet
you're also
you don't
telling me to
have
wear
any
3
footage of the
masks,
plane
too,
hitting
you
the
know?
Pentagon.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
One's wrong.
Need to be
One of those
reallocating
is
resources
wrong.
a little bit different.
Yeah.
The it's like the island off the coast of India with the tribe that's never been
Yeah,
contacted.
Yeah.
super hostile.
Um,
Fucking
And there's anywhere between 50 and 5,000. That's their estimate. Anywhere between 50 and 5,000
even with
people
all the
living on
technology,
this island.
they can't tell how many.
And
people
and
are
they,
there.
they said
think that they
the
live on
entire
ground.
island was
That's what they think.
actually covered in a tsunami once.
Yep.
And then they thought that they killed everyone, and then they all lived. And so now they're like, well, they maybe have some sort of an underground tunnel system. And any images they have are pretty far away, but they've got like spears and they're dancing and they'll shoot like arrows. And they killed the
Yeah.
only couple people who've ever visited.
The people who try to convert
If you
them to
look at that
Christianity
island
are-
though on Google Images off the coast of the island, there's actually like a huge shipwreck. Like it's like rusted out, but it's like cargo ship sized shipwreck on the coast. That's like on that island, and there's
know
like
what-
no news of anybody or any big ships that have
You
ever
know what
stopped
they
there
need to
like
do?
that.
Just send a fleet of drones over there. Not even harass them and just document. Find
Honestly,
cave and just go in there.
The
just
thing
I
is,
mean,
though, it's under-
I guarantee you they have tons of information.
Oh,
in that
yeah,
place. They
that
just
is
don't
true.
release
well, the
it.
thing is, it's under Indian jurisdiction.
Ah,
And
yeah.
India's government's labeled it like a no travel zone, no fly zone, nothing, and haven't allowed other nations to come actually document and stuff. So they're like, it's our land, and we're just going to preserve these people and let them live there in their tribalistic ways.
That's fine, fair enough.
And it's
How do you
alright.
feel about their?
You seen the fucking pictures of the people who fly the planes over that? Who were flying the planes over that?
Yeah,
Just they're fucking. You can't even see the paint underneath the plane. It's just arrows. Those fuckers are accurate. Yeah.
How do you feel about pockets of prehistoric like forces,
Ancient.
like out there in the middle of nowhere in the oceans?
okay, so that, as well as the reverse of that, pocket oceanic skeletons in like the middle of Africa and things like that, and it alludes to that there was some sort of a major landscape change. Some people say it's like obviously the flood,
Or how like
changed
Atlantis
everything.
like supposedly used to be a real thing. At some point.
Atlantis was a real thing,
It's in,
and
like,
it was the
Sahara
Eye of
in Africa.
Sahara,
Yeah.
and it was actually a multi-ringed structure in what was the coast at the time, but now it's like Middle Africa. And there's actually like they've found maps and plenty of writings from a bunch of people of the era talking about Atlantis, describing the size of it, and it completely matches up with the size of the Eye of Sahara in terms of like the cylindrical structures and everything like that. And apparently, according to the writings they found, it was like this huge ancient civilization, and it was Atlantis, which is actually right underneath the Atlas Mountains, and there was a King Atlan of the time who was said to have reigned in that area in like their like mythology, and like pretty much everything lines up to that. That was actually a huge civilization, and like according to measurements, like it's still the exact same.
I
It
think
is
we were
interesting.
way more advanced, like in some civilization, hundreds of thousands
What
of
do you-
years ago, and then something just wiped them all out, and then everybody just started. Like now, like
What do you
just
guys
took
know?
all the power
What do you
away
guys
and
know of the
everything,
Emerald
so-
Tablets?
Are you talking about where it's
The
like
ta-
kind
the
of
tablets
like
of
the
Thoth?
kind of like
Toth
the,
or Toth, yeah.
Yeah.
kind of like
I-
the crystal skulls? Like they don't know how they formed them or whatnot.
So it's supposed to be
couldn't
like
even do it with today's technology.
yeah. So they're saying it's supposed to be like an alchemic properties that like the molecules are locked in place that you could literally like you can't like destroy them. Like you could drop a nuclear bomb on them and they wouldn't destroy. And it's supposed to be what in the Smithsonian or something like that.
I don't remember.
So like so some of you, I'm gonna look up a little better. I'm gonna look it up more. But the tablets are supposed to be kept. There's 13 tablets. Only 12 of the chapters actually been released. Not the 13th chapter. If you read through those, because I've been like passively reading them each chapter very very slowly, and there's a lot of information in this little book. Like a lot. They talk about like early Egypt and like before it was even Egypt and how like civilization was already there. That's why you come up with that theory of like the pyramids were already there and the Egyptians were probably squatters who sat there.
So huge thing. The Library of Alexandria was the largest storage of knowledge in world history, and supposedly they had like literally everything humanity had ever figured out there, and it burnt down. And they don't know if it was purposeful or not, but if they were the largest storage of knowledge, there was probably some way to get out any type of texts that were probably like religious or like, you know, the secrets to the universe type of texts and stuff. And some people theorize that the library, the Vatican Library, houses some of these books. And that one's kind of a sketchy place. There's probably some really crazy information being
yeah.
stored there, being kept from the eyes of the public, because the Vatican Library, you're not allowed to go read the books. There's 50 miles of bookshelves, and only authorized people can come check out the books. You have to know the names of the books just to be able to check them out, which is kind of counterintuitive. There's still a closed off section no one's allowed into. You're not allowed to you're not allowed to place any information in any public forums or anything like that.
Can't even leave with the books.
You can't leave with the books.
You can't like take notes on them or
Correction.
anything.
You have a set number of books you can check out per month, which is 2 if you're on the authorized list. Like, there's some crazy information stored
So
there.
the Emerald Tablets are currently in the Museum of Egypt right now.
Okay.
So-
Egypt's crazy. They're really sketch. There's a lot of stuff in Egypt.
They'd be like, "Oh,
And-
tomb opened up, bury that."
And they cover up all kinds of stuff, and they don't release anything publicly. They keep a lot of information to themselves. Like, there's all kinds of stuff, like, theorized about the pyramids and the Sphinx and things like that.
Yeah, and the Egyptian government's just like, no, we won't answer that.
We won't answer
Yeah.
that. And
oh shit! Something just came out for this like sand washed away. Yeah, bury that.
Yeah.
and they'll keep it all to themselves. They'll open up sarcophaguses of like ancient pharaohs and stuff and not release any of it to the public, and they'll release statements that seem so vague and fake, and then that's what's literally taught in public schools are these like publicly released statements from Egyptian officials that have been proven wrong, and it's still being taught in schools. Like, this is how they built the pyramids, this is the social structure, and this
I'm gonna
is
send
exactly
y'all-
what happened. We know that because the Egyptian officials told us about 12 years
I'm gonna
ago.
send y'all a documentary that I watched on. I haven't even finished it because it's like 2.5 hours long. It's on Hulu. Me and my wife was watching it, and literally they're going about like they're talking about these space programs.
Fucking
and, like,
above Majestic or
Yes.
beyond Majestic.
So
yeah,
I think
saw
we were
that.
actually talking about that.
I
and
showed him,
because
like,
there was
15
some
minutes of
crazy
it.
stuff in there.
There's some wild
and
stuff in there.
we had actually made a good point about how some of that really, really crazy
The
stuff,
fucking Vril
far-fetched
Society
stuff.
and shit.
The de-aging, like... Oh,
So we had theorized that some of it was purposefully placed on there, and
Oh,
they
yeah.
knew it was false, sort of to just discredit themselves on purpose, so that they could keep the true information on there and still get it out there.
So that's
Because
what. That's,
you go.
oh, I was gonna say that's what people. That's what a lot of people say that like Alex Jones has been doing for a long time is like purposefully say bullshit every once in a while because
Yeah.
if you just like
Give all...
straight up said everything and you were dead on all the time, you'd get fucking assassinated.
Yeah, my wife
It's
even
like
said
how a
that.
lot of
Yeah.
people are spreading information through comedy now
Yeah.
and memes, because they'll like try and joke and stuff just to try and allude to what's actually happening.
Yeah.
But even then, people are getting arrested, canceled,
Yeah.
or
so
removed
you got to
from
make your shit
platforms.
seem like some sort of a fucking comedy show.
Yeah,
you
because
know?
she was like, I don't understand this. She was like, because my wife is big in the conspiracy, so she's like even deeper than me on this stuff. She was like, first off, she's like, how are you saying all this stuff and you're not dead? And like that's
Yeah,
an example.
yeah,
like, you
like they
have
probably have to
allude
put
some
bullshit
falsehood.
in there. Yeah.
You have to discredit yourself so that you can protect yourself.
But it's like the biggest thing stood out to me, and this is where I was like earlier when I was just like, you can't believe everything you read. He was like, yeah, everything you're taught is false. He was like, that was the first thing he was like, everything you're being taught is wrong. And I was just like,
yeah.
I can believe it.
Going
Yeah.
through high school, like I would literally receive information and then I'd go research it on my own, and then I would bring up some counterparts to my teachers, and my teachers would like
They'd freak out.
they
Like,
would freak out, and they'd be like, sometimes they like would pull me to the side and they're like, listen, like we have to teach certain stuff, like don't bring that type of stuff up in school. I can get in trouble for it if I'm teaching the wrong stuff, or if I let you know about certain points and stuff. Because of my curriculum, it's very strict because it's public education.
Because Common Core.
Yeah, and it's like, so he's basically, teachers are telling me like, stop sharing this information with your classmates too. Just accept the information we tell you so you can pass the tests and move on. Sometimes they'd be
It's
helpful.
it's not about learning. It's not about becoming smarter. It's about retaining information.
The
It's about
most-
retaining what you're told.
The most I've learned
yeah.
from were substitute teachers who, because they don't have to follow the curriculum as much, their job is basically just to
Playful.
babysit you for
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I've had some like older, like,
Old vet dudes or
right,
something.
right,
Yeah,
exactly,
just-
as
yeah.
substitute teachers, and
They're
they're like,
they- like especially
change your
history.
entire outlook on
Yeah.
life real quick. And they're
That's-
like, all right, you guys have a great day. And everybody's like, that was the best teacher in the entire
Come
world.
back!
Yeah.
But that's like taking it to, it's like, how can you really gauge someone as a genius? Like, based on standard Common Core, he was like, oh,
Yeah,
he's a
Einstein's
genius.
quote and whatnot.
Yeah, it's
Fucking,
like,
if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it's going to believe it's stupid its entire life.
exactly, yeah. So it's like, it's wild. It's like a lot of people out here are much smarter than they want to lead on, and they hate the fact that people are out there finding their own knowledge and looking for themselves. Like, oh shit, you know way more than you should know. And it alludes to the fact it's like, hey, we're spoon-fed and force-fed everything we know, think, believe. We're just indoctrinated.
It's crazy because the people behind a lot of this stuff don't even have to really try that hard.
No.
Because if they publicly release statements on the media or something, like you can see right now, like whether or not things help or not, like when things are released publicly, the entire world follows suit. Except for like a select few, and they get in trouble
It's
for it,
never
and then
been-
that scares
it's
everyone
never
else.
been easier than what it is
Right.
today.
And so
Yeah.
like if you go out there and search information, you can find it. You can learn these things. Like with a little bit of effort, you can find anything out. You'll find other places that tell you you're wrong, or
Yeah,
things that are like,
they
oh,
don't
fact
even
checkers
they
say
don't
this
even
is
give
wrong.
a fuck when the CIA releases shit that's 50 years old. That's like completely groundbreaking. They don't even give a fuck because they know that nobody big they will let cover it.
They
you know?
also release it under the guise of other news and
Like,
stuff. So like big
I've-
news happens, and then CIA will publicly like release some unclassified documents behind news, and then nobody ever sees it, but it's out there now.
Yeah, it's just the oldest magician's trick in the world.
Right.
Misdirection.
Distraction. Yep.
Yeah.
see
And
my
then
hand, see my hand.
the yeah, it happens often. It's
Where do you even find these released CIA documents? Like, I don't.
There's
I
a
don't even know.
website.
government
That's what I'm saying,
websites.
like, I don't-
There are websites that
I
literally
don't even know
government
where
websites.
to
There you
even
go.
start to look for it. Like,
Yeah,
I've-
so there's
I've heard
huge
plenty.
databases online where
Right.
you can look up any of the like bills being passed, executive orders. Like you can actually go find this information. Like people think that they have to get the information from the news. They're like, oh, Biden passed 37 executive orders in his first week, and they removed all the damage Trump did, and he saved the world. But you can
Racism
you
is
can
no
go
longer
look at
like-
these executive orders
But what
and read
were the
every single
executive
detail about
orders?
them and
Oh, I
see
don't know.
actually
The president
what is
knows
he
them.
releasing. It just takes a little bit
He's
of
doing
effort.
it for our own good. That's what he's doing.
Yeah,
He knows
I don't know what he
everything we
passed,
need.
but we're good. It's
Yeah.
executive orders.
Yeah,
There was
always-
two
Oh.
he had signed, and he had literally said, "Yeah, I'm not sure what these ones are, but I'll go ahead and sign them." Executive orders.
Oh, and you saw Amazon is getting fucking greenlit. I think it's just for the state of California. I'm pretty sure, but Amazon is getting greenlit to have like drones deliver shit just all the time, like publicly, like through public airspace. They can just drone deliver shit, you know.
Yeah, that's just a. easy
And
way
now
to fucking
Amazon
keep your eye on
can
everybody.
use their
Yeah.
cameras to watch you,
Cameras and GPS.
just like your smart homes
package
are
is
always
here.
listening to you. and it's like people are like, what are you so scared of? What are you hiding? You have nothing to hide. So
It's
why
like
are you
I'm
so
afraid
worried?
of saying one thing wrong, and then they fucking release all my shit and like dox the.
That's
fuck
the thing
out of
too,
me.
and you don't know what's going to happen in the future. Maybe you need to go somewhere or do something, and now they have this information on you. Maybe you get arrested for having a certain view, and then they can just pull this whole database of information on you.
Or even if your views are like relatively normal, quote unquote now, maybe in 8 years
Guaranteed
they're not
in 8
normal
years
anymore,
they're going to be
you know,
extremist
so.
views, because extremist views now, in some extent, some of them were normal 10 years ago.
I literally
Like-
believe what my fucking grandfather believed, just everyday dude.
Yep.
And now I'm
and
a
now you're an
fucking right-wing
extremist on the
extremist,
right wing
you know, it's like,
because
what the
you
fuck?
don't follow
It's
track with what's
because I
going-
like going to church and I want to save most of my money, and now I'm like a right wing extremist. Yeah,
How dare you?
it's like, come on.
I interested to see what's going on in the future.
I'm not
Now
interested.
happening
I'm not
right now.
happy.
They're
I just-
going very quickly.
They're going super quickly. I was actually going to say earlier, and then I got super sidetracked about that because we were talking about how crazy things are now. In high school, I remember telling myself like, I was just born in the most like peaceful, nothing happening time. Like it's crazy. Like the time I was born in, nothing's happening.
The world stage kind of like figured out how to just keep everything peaceful.
It was
all
just
the
like
time,
blank
you know?
for a short period of time. And I remember growing up and I'm like, am I just going to grow up in like the most blank period time ever? And it was almost like, as a kid, I'm like, this is kind of boring. And now that the entire world's going to shit so fucking quickly, I'm like, kind of miss
What
that.
did you do?
Just like
I take it back, I
normal
take it back, I
day-to-day
take it back.
stuff, you know?
Like
You
the
just
like the
live your
start
life.
of The Incredibles, where he's like, I feel like the maid, I just cleaned up this mess, just keep it clean for 10 minutes.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, thinking back, high school, really all you heard was the war in the Middle East and whatnot, and then that's it.
And
I don't know about y'all.
and also we need to legalize gay marriage, and if you don't agree with that, you're a Nazi. And then so they quickly just legalized gay marriage, and that was like the big thing of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little older than y'all, so like my hard stamp
No, you ain't that much older than me.
9/11. I remember exactly where I was when 9/11 happened. I was in fucking homeroom class in middle school, Mr. Smith, because he had a dog named Sam, and he was the coolest teacher because he had a dog named Sam that had his own ID that was an employee at school.
That must
was
have
it
been fucking
That's dope.
Wild,
They
too.
you couldn't get away with that now.
His dog was known, like had his own ID badge, walked around school, was not aggressive, never bit anybody, nothing.
Yeah, you can't get away with that now.
Nope.
That wouldn't happen.
The thing
Had his
is
own little
now
bed in the
it's
corner.
it's one of my biggest gripes is that basically the government is playing babysitter and stupidity is protected. Being stupid is supposed to hurt, basically.
Yeah.
I heard someone say that the other day on YouTube. He had a shirt and it said "Stupidity should hurt," and it's like that makes sense. If you make a decision that's like unsafe, like you should have to pay the prices. It shouldn't be protected or illegal to do that because sometimes people might do it wrong.
Play
It's
super
like
game, win super prizes.
right.
Oh, yeah, I'm gonna go rob this dude.
because
oh, no, he shot
stupidity
me.
doesn't
Why-
hurt,
why did
now
he shoot me?
people
You know, he doesn't
are
have the right to defend himself.
stolen basic freedoms and stuff.
Yeah.
It's you're told how to live more and more every day
Yeah.
because that's what works. That's better than any other way, according
So
to
smooth.
us. So you don't
Yeah.
get to choose. According to the algorithm, that is the most effective way of life. In fact, the best way for you not to get sick is if you
Wear 4 masks.
if you wear
I just
16
saw
masks.
that. Yeah.
They're saying double or triple masking is better. But they're like, basically,
So I
instead
don't
of
need to
living
breathe
your
at
life,
all.
when
Yeah.
you're born, we're going to
I'm
hook
just
you up
wearing
to
my
a
fucking
feeding
gas
tube.
mask.
If you just lay there, we'll inject you with steroids and food, and then your body will live 200 years. You'll lay there the whole time with your eyes closed, but your body will make it 200 years. They're like,
No,
that's the best way
saw
for you
an
to live.
article. I saw an article that was like, growing humans in pods instead of mothers' wombs
I
is
saw that.
only 5 to 10 years away, and I'm like, nope, I'm moving to the fucking woods, and I'm never talking to any of you people again.
There's,
Hey.
it's like when
There's some
so there
parallels
was some
in Wally, man. There's some parallels of Wally in reality.
There was-
70% of America is fucking overweight. 40% of that 70% is like not just like casually, like clinically morbidly obese.
Yeah,
It-
I'm
it's
considered
the-
obese.
No, are you body shaming right now?
Yo, yes.
It's
Bro,
crazy.
Yo, yes.
The leading cause of death in the United States is the
Obesity.
least reported cause of death in the United States. And the least likely cause of death in the United States is the most reported. Obviously different this year because of COVID. But it was gun violence and gun murder was the highest reported statistic in the news, yet equated to the least amount of deaths according to like other things. And then heart disease was the leading cause of death because of obesity, and was reported about 1% of the time. And very easily could be changed with certain regulations and stuff, but they don't want to change that. They like having an easy,
We need to be like Japan. and
lazy
food.
nation that they can just control, and they listen because it's comfortable.
I watched a video of like a PE program from the 1970s.
Oh, I seen that one.
It
That
got me
was
motivated.
that
I was
was
like,
like-
all these dudes look
Hell yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
And they're
Yeah.
like
People are like,
11
they going to
to
the
8.
army? No, they're
That's-
just doing PT.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
like, no, I'm just going to high school. It's like, hell yeah. Everyone needs to look
Let's
like
go
that.
run fucking 3 miles. Let's
Yeah.
go, bro.
Yeah.
Go to math class afterwards.
I
What's up?
don't get why nobody cares about their health anymore. It's so
Because
good.
it takes too much effort.
It is.
That's
It's hard.
It pays off. You
Yeah, you fat
work
fuck.
harder when you don't work out. Because then you're fucking working to get out of your chair. I don't
Yeah.
have to fucking struggle to stand up. Like, I can walk around my house and be okay. If I want
Yo.
to do a project, I can do it. Other
Hey.
people are like,
The hospital, when I was working in the hospital, and you'll be surprised how many I've seen, more than I would ever imagine, like plus 600s. But a lot of people were like 4'11", weighed more than me, 360 pounds, and I'm just like, can
Why?
you walk? They were like, no, you're gonna have to slide me over, and then I'm just like,
And you're just like, no, you can sit outside.
no, so I
until you
slide
get
him over
skinny.
because I'm big dude, and I'm just like, but I'm just thinking like, you should be ashamed of yourself too. One,
It's-
being this big, and then two, being like, I have to help you
We
because
live-
of your fault.
we
Yeah.
live in a culture in which, like, your bad decisions are
They're
either
protected, like you said.
right, protected, or even sometimes praised,
Yeah.
and then people who talk in a way that may hurt their feelings,
What was
but
that one
sometimes
big
they need to
bitch
hear
that-
it. It's like illegal.
She's a singer that.
Lizzo or
Yeah,
whatever.
I'm healthy. No, the fuck you're
Yeah.
not. No, I can hear you breathing.
Wait.
Your interview.
Hold on. This is the thing about celebrities, man. Every single one of them that are big will get skinny. It's
Oh, yeah.
part of the
In
image.
a heartbeat, yeah.
Adele, she was a big girl. Now she's really skinny.
Then
Doesn't
she
look as
got
good.
she got made fun of for getting skinny. They're
Yes.
like, "How dare you shame
Jordan-
fat people?
Right.
You should have stayed fat."
Short Jordan Sparks. She was a big girl.
What's the
Lost a lot
one
of weight,
chick?
like
She's a comedian. She's like, fuck yeah, I'm fat. I don't care. I'm funny.
from Bridesmaid?
Yeah.
I know what you're talking
She
Yeah,
lost
because they realize they want to
Yeah.
live longer, or it's on some MK Ultra type shit.
And
Who
you have to
knows?
remember too.
But
What's
I
the
like how she didn't fucking hold everybody else to her standard. She's like, yeah, I'm fat. I know. I'm funny though. She's like,
Yeah.
whatever.
She-
Like,
like,
all right,
it's-
cool, chick.
it's a
You know, you're gonna
trend.
die, whatever.
Yeah.
But you're a funny bitch though. You're right.
once you solidify yourself in that like realm, it happens. It's gonna happen. Like Liz is gonna come out. She's like, hey, like I went to the doctor, something happened, and I just got more concerned about
But
my
all
health.
you fans out there that are fat, stay unhealthy, die soon because fuck you.
Hey, no. Hey, when the real apocalypse comes and the zombies are chasing, you ain't gotta be the fastest man. You just gotta be faster than that man.
Yeah,
What
exactly.
is it in Zombieland? Rule number 1: cardio.
Yeah, it's like
I understand why the
double
army
tap,
cares so
double
much.
tap.
It's like, what gun do you carry, if you're hiking in the woods and there's a fucking bear that's going to eat your ass? Like, oh, I just carry a 22 so I can shoot my girlfriend in the knee and then just
Bye.
You don't need to kill the bear,
Just need to feed him.
Yeah.
Bear was just hungry. Said, "Ooh, fast food."
Yeah.
Well, before this gets too long and nobody even wants to start it because they're like, a 2-hour podcast? Yeah, right. These guys aren't even good.
Nobody's listening to us anyways. It's
That's
okay.
true. It is one of the greatest things about the podcast.
You can say whatever the fuck you want because nobody's
one,
listening.
we can say whatever we want.
Oh, we're going to get deplatformed.
Oh no! My 12 fans, which are probably
Scooter's
6
gonna-
people watching twice.
Scooter's gonna miss us. You're like, hey, these are my boys.
He
over there in
hit
the
me up
States
like-
right now.
But
He's like, you make a video, get some views, you don't post no more?
the best thing though too is just the fact that like this is sort of just like cementing some good memories. Like and I've already went back and listened to some, and I'm like, that's nice to go back and
It's a
listen,
good time.
and
It's a good
relive
time,
that,
yeah.
and it is good, and it's going to get better with time. Like in 5 years, looking and listening
Hindsight
back to this,
10 years when your boys are listening to this.
yes.
Oh,
He'll be like,
yeah.
I remember my dad going to the basement and doing podcasts with his friends.
That will be
true.
cool.
That is-
In terms of just historical record for
I'm just
them,
gonna 10 years with my boys actually be like, you want to hear some of my crazy ass friends? Here you go.
Yeah, exactly. See, yeah.
Now this was really, we really babied it down, but this is a
They're
good
like,
general idea.
Dad, we all know about this. What are you talking about?
Oh God.
Fucking boomers.
you think your life is
Millennials.
hard?
Gen Zers, how dare you?
Yeah.
And it's crazy where things are going, and at such a fast pace. And I feel like with our
It's terrifying.
with the petitions that we have now, they're gonna just like
Oh,
green light
stupid.
more and more stuff, allowing
Yeah.
more and more change, and in a much more flexible way. Some crazy stuff might be happening in the next couple years. I'd just say be
Hey,
ready,
would you-
be prepared, have some sort of a, I guess, plan in the event things hit the fan, whether it be like food collapse or a war or something. Like, just have your plans in place to a certain extent. Don't be sitting there with your pants at your ankles, because there's going to be a lot
find
of
your dick
rape
in the dirt.
happening.
hey, if you guys want to get together by 10 square miles, establish Flood as the sheriff, we can make our own little town.
We can make our own country, technically, because that's, in terms of international law, a country is, as long as you live there and you have established borders and you can enforce your laws, it's your country. Whether or not it was someone else's country or not, because that's, if you look at like countries taking over other countries, it's not like, oh, actually you can't have it. Their law said you can't be there. They're like, no, they just fucking took it and they enforce their laws now. So if we do the same thing, we can literally
Yeah,
create our own country.
Then it's gonna be fucking.
I just want a town.
It's gonna be the ranch in
Well, it'll
Texas
be
all
town
over
size,
again, where
but
it's
we're gonna
surrounded
call it
by
country.
fucking-
Yeah,
yeah.
The town of country.
Our
Our country.
country of town?
The best way to
Have
get
you
away
been-
with anything in the U.S. is to do it in plain sight, quietly.
Quiet.
Yes.
You can't hide. They're always going to track you. You're in the system. Period. Like, so you just kind of gotta blend in, but you do your own thing quietly.
Just
That's
do
how
it.
you get away with shit. There's no more disappearing in the woods for fucking no. Like, they can find you. It's gonna happen. You just got to do it in plain
Unless
sight,
you're in the ocean,
quietly.
because that place is
Fucking-
fucking a mystery.
Exactly.
Apparently,
Fucking
because we know
speak
more about
softly and carry
space
a
than
big
the
stick
ocean.
that you hide. That's what you
Yeah,
got to
that
do.
you hide,
Yeah. Don't let them see it, but when you need to, just
I use
crack
that
them
to check my
motherfuckers.
tire pressure.
This is my tire checker. What are you talking
Yeah.
about? Don't turn around.
I use this to check my tire pressure. Well, this has been an excellent episode. Thanks for joining. We'll probably call it here unless y'all got any closing statements.
Dragons are real. Fuck you if you don't believe that.
White people aren't indigenous to Earth.
Yeah, white people are the devil. Fuck you all.
Jews are in charge of everything.
And your mom is a Nazi.
God.
This has been the Foxhole. Stay tuned for the next
See,
episode.
that just made everybody hate all y'all, and they all love me now.
Hey, this is our first 2-hour episode.
Oh,
Moment
shit.
of silence for 2 hours. And we'll call it.
Okay, goodbye.